Hello and welcome to the Undercut Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Billington, and we're back to review the 2025 Formula One season. Joining me to do this, of course, is my trusty co-host, Mr. Thiemo Almers-Daly. How are you?
Not bad, not bad. We're at the end of what has been a quick and also very long season. So we were talking a little bit before hitting record that we might weirdly get through this episode suspiciously quickly, which is odd considering how long the season has gone on for and how much I think we thought we were going to be able to talk about at the start of the year. And don't get me wrong, there's stuff to talk about, but I think this has been a season where we were set up with so much potential in one direction, and then we got a very different narrative potentially to what we were expecting, and we're now having to reassess how we review a year that was just different, I think, to how we thought. So lots going on in my mind on the F1 subject. What about yourself?
Um, yeah, I'm with you on that. It's a lot. I'm very well in myself. I've had work's Christmas lunch today, all six of us, which was nice. Went to the pub, had a good meal. But yeah, when it comes to the season, I think I'm with you. It's been a long season that's sort of flown by, that's also given us a fair amount, but at the same time given us absolutely nothing. It's somehow tried to be all things to all people and failed to be absolutely anything at all. And it's quite interesting in how it's come about in that way. And obviously, we say that I say that like it's sort of been constructed to be like that. There's just sort of the unique way that it's tumbled out in the fact that we're at the end of a set of regulations. You've got that convergent evolution of the cars. Certainly, when we get to the midfield, it's a trickier one to unpick because of all of those cars arriving at a similar level of performance at the same time with a very interesting mix of drivers in there. It produces these interesting results. But at the top, it's not foregone conclusion, but sort of I think the talking points are obvious ones. The season hasn't given us anything new to come away with it from when it comes to how we look at the drivers within those top 3, 4 teams. We have learned nothing new about them, apart from maybe Kimi Antonelli. That he's the only one in that top 4 team that we've learned something new about.
Yeah, and you've got to focus, I think, less on what you wanted from the season or what you expected from the season, but on what you actually got. And I think that's what's throwing a spanner into the field of works here. And I was thinking back to all the Grand Prix as well, and we've got some categories later where we're trying to decide best moments, worst moments, good Grand Prix, bad Grand Prix. I'm looking at the list going, you could probably have eliminated half the season pretty easily just because not an awful lot it felt like happened. And if we're looking back in 10, 20 years and someone says the we now trying to think of a boring Grand Prix from this year, Saudi Arabian Grand Prix wasn't especially memorable, I don't think. I can't think of anything off
Uh,
the top of my head.
Norris stacked it
Um,
qualifying. That was the only thing that really stands out to me on that one.
but again, qualifying, not even the race.
Yeah.
So, if we go
If you
purely from a
want
Grand Prix perspective,
boring
there's a
Grand
bunch of
Prix, um,
I wasn't gonna choose the ones we've chosen later for ourselves in potentially worst Grand Prix category. But again, there's a number of them where you look at the list and you go, I'm not sure. I mean, you think about Zandvoort to an extent, it's memorable for one reason in particular, but in terms of two reasons in particular. But as a race itself, not much happened. Australia was messy, but it wasn't much else to it. Baku, aside from the opening lap melee, not much really
yeah.
happened in terms of the race. You get interesting results from these
Cota's
races,
Grand
but they're not
Prix,
reflective to
yeah.
what happened.
Yeah, Cota's Grand Prix, relatively dull Grand Prix, interesting sprint, interesting run up and pressure to it. The circumstances around it, very interesting. The actual race itself, pretty
And I
dire.
think that's what makes it so weird
Yeah.
to try and get your head around everything.
Yeah, there's been so many. Yeah, there's been a lot of pressure and intrigue and things happen, but so often the races themselves haven't been where those things have happened, and as a result, it's often been a bit flat. We're starting off very negatively. We'll kick off with a bit of news and actually something positive that I think both Timo and I are sort of in favour of, and this is the return of Portimao. And I do want to say this for my own ego, pointed this out in our review of the Italian Grand Prix earlier this year. I'd call
When
win.
you pointed it out, you predicted it in one of your many, many predictions. You're pointing out as if it was a foregone conclusion that you happen to know definitively in advance. You made a prediction.
Yeah, I
It
hadn't
happened to
spoken
be right.
to Hector Pedralbez or whoever it is that runs Circuit Portimao, and got this as an inside scoop. I was just basing it
And even
off
if
of,
you had, why would he have told you?
yeah, I was just basing it off of sort of research and following tales and bits. But anyway, um, sometimes my news sounding does produce results. But it seems as though that it will be replacing possibly Zandvoort in 2027 and 2028. I haven't actually got a confirmation yet on where it's going to slot into the
Did he
calendar.
not tell you that when he was confirming the
No,
news to you in
my
the scoop?
my mythical Portuguese contact did not tell me this, which would be handy if he did, because I'd like to try and book some hotel rooms early because Georgia would like to go to
Mm.
that one, as would I, because I like cortado coffees and I like pastel de natas, and port for that matter. Um, so we'll
You'd
see
be happy
how,
on two fronts there.
yeah. But either way, it's I think it's a good choice. It's an interesting circuit. It's a good circuit, and I think it'll be interesting to see how it goes with the new cars as well, where we've got a lot lower downforce on these cars. I think we've got a 30% reduction in the cars for 2026, and we've got these huge elevation changes where we're going to have cars going a bit light through turns as well. It's going to involve drivers, force them to be very active behind the wheel, and yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting one. If it produces an interesting race, I can see Formula One being quite interested in staying there, which will then give us three races on the Spanish Peninsula, or the whatever the name is for that peninsula.
Part of Europe.
Yeah, there is a name for it, and
Yeah,
my
I can't
brain
think of
goes.
it either off the top of my head, but
I don't think it's Istrian. It's not Catalonian. There is a name for it, but yeah,
I was also just going to say that I think even if the race is good, it depends on how much money they can make from it, because that seems to be the all important thing for F1 and Liberty these days. And in 2021, 22, we got decent races. The whole time was 21, helped by the championship fight. 22, I think we got Kimi Raikkonen's excellent charge through the field on the first lap. Sort of the, if anyone ever questions why you're talking so highly of Kimi Raikkonen, show them that opening lap in what was essentially a Sauber. Um, and he makes the way up from, what was it, someone in the back of the grid, well into the top
like
10 by the end of
yeah,
like the first, second lap. And you go, yeah, he's actually pretty good, so you can shut it. And yeah, great kind of unique circle. We haven't been there too much. I'm up for it. Again, for a 2 year contract, to see how it goes. Yeah, why not? I want more of that sort of thing. Do that with other tracks where instead of four tracks in the Middle East, let's go back to Turkey and see if it works with these locations. Go back to Germany. Let's go to these places and try these things out again and see if, and if there's nothing, and if it doesn't work, or if you don't get the audience for it, then fine. But at least you've opened up a potential new avenue and had a look.
I think it'd be I'm excited for them to again try something new, especially with the new series of cars. It was 2020 that we had that brilliant race start from Raikkonen, because
Well, that's 2020.
21 he crashed into Giovinazzi's teammate, bringing out the safety car at the end of lap one, ending Raikkonen's race and damaging and Giovinazzi's car. But I think Giovinazzi came like 12th or something. He didn't do too badly, despite running a mangled car. But anyway, Portimao's back. It's good news. Meanwhile, bad news, Christian Horner might be back. He's buying into Alpine, it seems to be. He and a group of
Him
investors,
and everyone else.
yeah, him and a group of investors are buying a 28% stake in the French outfit, which begs the question, who owns how much of this team? Because I know that it wasn't too long ago in the Esteban Ocon days that we announced that an investment firm representing Ryan Reynolds and a bunch of sports stars from America had bought a major chunk of the team. I can't remember if the French government are supposed to have some sort of sway in it as well.
They had something to do with it, I'm sure,
I
but I
know
don't
they
know
do
how.
Renault road cars. I don't know if that extends to ownership over the
Mm.
team, and it's all very messy. And again, it's a bit like sort of governments going for a windfall tax. Yeah, you get a lot of money instantly, but you only get it once. And given how badly your teams performed this year, it might be sort of useful to have that money coming in a bit more regularly. Either way, Pierre Gasly is going to be happy, I'm sure, to see his former boss return.
Yeah, I mean, if that happens and if it all comes across, it's just yet another confusing piece in the Alpine puzzle where no one, themselves included, are aware of what the picture is supposed to look like. So we'll just have to see what happens there. And yeah, I guess we'll just be hoping for it to be a less worse season next year. But we'll get to them in due course.
Yeah, we'll get to Alpine in due course. We'll kick off with our sort of review of the 2025 season. I think this is an interesting fact to kick this off. This is the first season since 2008 where each team had at least one pointless weekend. For McLaren, famously, that was Las Vegas, where they were disqualified. Mercedes, it was Monaco. Neither driver finished in the points. George Russell can blame Alex Albon for that one. Red Bull, for them, it was Austria on account of Verstappen being crashed out by Antonelli and Sonoda just not being very good.
Being Sonoda.
Yeah. Ferrari, their most recent one was Zandvoort, where neither driver finished in the points, but famously also China, where they were both disqualified. Williams, Abu Dhabi, and VCARB, Abu Dhabi, they were their last double non-points results. Aston Martin, Las Vegas, finished outside the points there. Haas, it was Qatar, Sauber, Qatar, and Alpine, Abu Dhabi. But Alpine, you can pick.
Alpine.
You can throw darts at the
this is quite a few.
fairly certain you're going to strike a double pointless weekend. But yeah, it's just interesting. We've sort of had a season that's been very up and down for everyone. And we'll get into those up and downs. And we'll start off with the champions, McLaren, Lando Norris, P1, Oscar Piastri, undeserving of that P3, better deserving of a different position, dare I say.
Will I say immediately that they should be the other way around? Maybe. I haven't decided yet. But yeah, constructor-wise, brilliant sequel season for them as a team from 2024 to 25. They built on everything that they did and they ran away with it pretty steadily. It never looks in doubt. You were thinking back at sort of round 5, 6 even, where, yeah, that's that pretty much sorted. It's just a matter of when, not if. Driver-wise, on the other hand, they would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for those darn papaya rules. And that's where everything just unravels. And the fact that it happened immediately from Australia onwards. And you think back to when we had a title fight, this height would have been 21 if you go for all season long. And you can understand why team orders were being deployed at both Red Bull and Mercedes then, because against Bottas and against Perez and favouring Hamilton and Verstappen, because from that first race in Bahrain, you're looking at how viciously they're going after each other, going, yeah, this might turn into something. You know what? If we're wrong, we'll sort that out later. But right now, we're playing with the cards we're dealt, and it looks pretty serious. Australia didn't look like that. It was a free for all because of the conditions, and every kind of driver just has to survive. Many of which did not in that particular race, and crashing out left, right, and centre, and squirreling off the track when you weren't kind of being able to stay on it, and at least you were going to avoid crashing. And it just kind of, again, it went from there. So you have these weird parallel storylines of the constructors. We said this so many times over the review episodes all season of constructors, such a brilliant job. But then you look at the driver championship, go, how the hell have they won the constructors by a country mile? It's sort of like what Verstappen did at Red Bull with being the sole constructor in a sense. There you go. How's he managed to get where he has, essentially just being the one-man team? So it's I still don't really know what to say driver-wise. Both drivers did well, obviously, this year. They had the best car on the grid, and Lando, the races that he finished in, his lowest finishing position was 7th in Baku. So he had a couple of DNFs. He was still classified as finishing, but he didn't. And the rest of the time, he didn't put too much of a foot wrong in terms of the driving. He came with a consistent result. And Oscar really sort of the same. You know, he bounced back after Australia with a hell of a run on podium, either winning or finishing in third, all the way up to Canada where he finished 4th. And he probably could have had a go at being in third if it wasn't for a certain someone else. But then it was just that second half of the season. But even then, you think back and you go, okay, yeah, he had that DNF in Baku, bad, fair enough. Lando had a couple of those, awkward. But he didn't not perform either. You know, his worst results in the second half of the season were P4s and P5s. He wasn't doing badly. It was just in comparison to Max, Max just wasn't off the podium all of the summer break afterwards. And Lando was just ahead of him. So he didn't really do anything wrong. And it's just, again, the maths, we've said this time and time again. We understand the maths. That makes sense. It also makes no sense at all.
The numbers make sense. The numbers are sort of unquibblable. It's the sort of performance and the outcome. And I think you're right in the McLaren needed to bring in team orders. Like you said with 2021, it was clear how the team battle was going to go because teams were ready to sort of enforce those team orders and sort of make it a thing. But with McLaren, they just didn't want to. And while that never outwardly cost them points, it never caused them to lose points. I don't think it ever really did. No significant loss in points. It was always pretty much a 1-2 or a 2-3.
Most significant unless you count just countering Max generally and bringing him into the fight that he didn't need to be in if they'd been able to approach things differently.
Well, it didn't cost McLaren in the constructors, is the thing.
No,
and that's what really matters for McLaren. Driver's title is just there for the glory. The constructors one is where all the prize money is, but ironically, fans and followers of the sport only really care about the drivers one. It's quite an interesting way around. And McLaren did what they needed to do to win that driver's title, but I think as soon as they wrapped it up, they needed to draw a line and say, right, that's done. This is where we stand. And that would have been what, coming out of Singapore. And I can tell you, coming out of Singapore, Piastri was leading by 22 points to Norris. Norris had already started eating into that points lead going through Italy and Baku from what was 34 coming out of Zandvoort down to 22 out of Singapore. I think they should have at that point, with Verstappen at that point 63 points behind, they should have gone, right, team orders, sorry, Lando, this isn't yours to go for. Or say, look, we're giving you 2 or 3 more races. Otherwise, whichever driver's on top is the one that we'll be team ordering for.
They're incredibly lucky that Leclerc didn't get past Lando in Abu Dhabi because 2 points in it at the end. If you're, this is what we said, towards the end of the season. If they lose even by a point, it's 1 point that wasn't necessary because they, as much as it's Max and Red Bull doing what they need to do, it's helped enormously by McLaren just going, no, he's after you, no, after you, no, after you. And I think, as we said after Abu Dhabi initially, we're not used to seeing championships won in this way. And I think that's where we're struggling as well to figure out how to feel and rate it and all the rest of it and assess it.
Yeah, it's just a strange one-to-one pick for why McLaren did what they did the way they did. And yeah, they won the important bit, but I
say teams are there for the constructors, but the fans, the drivers, and pretty much everyone else, they're there for the drivers.
Yeah.
And that's why we're more hung up about that. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, if you can remember, coming out of when McLaren won the Constructors' Championship, we went, that's nice for them. Moving on.
Yeah,
we didn't spend an awful lot of time talking about it.
Yeah, we're like, well done. You've had your drivers pretty much sort of sat side by side on the podium for most of the season so far. That was bound to happen. Your closest rival was Red Bull, who have only had one driver in that fight. Of course, you're going to win the constructors' title. And then we're like, okay, now do something interesting with the drivers. They just didn't, and their failure to do that was what opened the door to Verstappen for that fight. And it shouldn't have finished with Verstappen in second. And I think that'll be the phrase that Piastri is sort of working into a speech for Zach Brown, going, it shouldn't have finished.
Getting a PowerPoint presentation tips from George Russell going, this is how you want to approach
Brown
before you enter the
If you think about Mercedes' most dominant seasons, where did Valtteri Bottas usually finish? P2, right behind Lewis Hamilton. That
Perez as well in 23.
Yeah.
Right behind
Verstappen. If you're going to be ruthless and dominant as a team, you do it to the bitter end and you have your drivers finishing championships 1-2. But instead, McLaren got a bit sloppy, a bit heavy-handed with the papaya rules and sort of how they had to get places. And I think
in of themselves were never really defined. They were just this concept that you go, do you know what they are? Because no one's doing a very good job of explaining it.
Yeah. I don't think we'll ever know until one of the drivers or Andrea Stella writes a book. Because Zach Brown will never.
And even then, they'll probably be different.
Yeah. And I think you've only got to look at the video that emerged from the McLaren Christmas party at Woking and Zach Brown's comments on stage. and he said, "You guys
He-
didn't really have much of a choice.
we
You
took a
were at
chance on
Alpine.
you.
Yeah, we took a chance on you, but you didn't really have much of a choice. You were at Alpine, and you had to beat Stoffel Van Dorn. It's and
With some more colourful language thrown in for good measure there
yeah,
as well.
and
Um,
that speaks
I don't know about
volumes
you, but
to
he
how Zach
reminded me
Brown
of.
thinks about his team, his drivers, and how he treats them. And I think that is a great show of how we've ended up in this weird scenario where they are his playthings. It doesn't matter how they finish. He is Andy with Lando and Oscar as Woody and Buzz. It doesn't. They are whatever he concocts a story with. The Papaya rules are whatever evil scheme Mr. Potato Head thinks up that day.
I was thinking, and this is quite different to yours, but perhaps also accurate. It reminded me in that particular moment of Boyle from Brooklyn Nine-Nine of just completely misreading the situation
Yeah,
and saying what he thinks is absolutely appropriate, and everyone else going, "Dude, why? It was so unnecessary. We
yeah.
didn't need any of that."
There was laughter in the room, but it felt awkward and forced, and people going,
Hmm.
"Yeah," because sort of
Not
unfair on
quite Jeb
Stoffel Van
Bush,
Dorn.
please clap, but not
Yeah,
far off either.
yeah, like fair enough. Take a dig at Alpine. They've had an absolute stinker of a season, but don't have
What's
a
wrong with Stoffel Van Dorn? He had
yeah,
to deal with McLaren in a terrible time for the
yeah. It's
team.
not like McLaren was actually any good at that point in time either. That's he was also up against Fernando Alonso for what it's worth. I mean,
Hmm.
yeah,
Who also couldn't do much, but that doesn't make him a bad driver. It just shows how terrible the car was. We'll
yeah,
get to that with Ferrari as well later. But again, it was such an odd thing, and I think that's how a lot of people who aren't like joined at the hip with McLaren in terms of them as a team or as a driver that they're a fan of is that yes, we'll remember it as the year that they won both championships, but we'll also just remember it as being odd.
yeah.
And that's
And
going to be the standout thorn in the side that just gets them. You go, oh, remember 2025 when McLaren did the double? Yeah, that was a bit odd.
unless you're a dyed-in-the-wool McLaren fan, I think this year, and certainly for me, it will leave you with a bitter taste in your mouth about that team.
It's like both drivers' first wins in the sport. You go, I kind of thought it'd be better. And
Better.
then they followed it up with a great win. You go, that's how we wanted to see that
Yeah.
happen. But we haven't had that bit yet. And I don't know if I want that,
Yeah.
but that's the kind of weird taste that it's left in the mouth. But
We'll see how it
yeah, we
wraps
should
up.
move
But
on.
yeah. We've discussed McLaren plenty through this season. To second place in the constructors, Mercedes. George Russell finished this year's title in fourth, and Kimi Antonelli in a fairly strong seventh place for the rookie.
Yeah, you're mentioning earlier of Monaco being the pointless weekend that Mercedes had. I believe it was also George Russell's only time finishing outside of the top 10 all season. He finished
Quite
in points in
possibly.
every single other race. And I think he just had another season that demonstrates we need to see him in a title hunt. We see glimpses of this all over the place. He had his Charles Leclerc sort of 23-year or 24-year this year with just comes in, is anonymous, gets results, is always there, thereabouts, picks up the wins and the podiums. And we saw obviously a glimpse of what he could do back in 2020 with that beast of Mercedes. And you go, just please give him a car that he can do something with properly because I just really want to see what kind of combat he could do. Um, Antonelli, yeah, overall great rookie season. Amusingly, had a little bit of a dip at the tracks where I thought he would do better at, sort of
Mm.
the familiar ones that he'd raced in Formula Two, for example. But it was some of the tracks they'd never been to before where he really excelled. And yeah, I think he's a driver where I was having mixed feelings about him at the start of the season because his F2 campaign wasn't the best. And people kept saying, yeah, but look at the age, look at what he's jumping from first. I'm like, yeah, but I didn't force him into that situation.
Yeah.
I would have rather seen him go into F3 and F2 and do it the proper way. Um, so I was kind of apprehensive and worried that if it didn't go great for him, then you've just, I think we said this as early as Australian training, you've just broken a child essentially.
You've just
Have fun
nuked
with
this
that.
kid's career. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and on the personal level as well, you've kind of demolished him in a way that's going to need a lot of therapy. Fortunately, he didn't have a bad season, and like you say, P7 overall, only a few points away from Lewis Hamilton, the guy he replaced at
Like
the team.
seven-time world
Not too
champion.
shabby.
Yeah.
Couple of podiums, sprint pole in Miami, not too shabby going. I think
Yeah,
he's going to be there for a long time, either with Mercedes or just F1 generally. And I don't think he's as good as Lewis was in his rookie season, but I'd say if Piastri had the car available to him that Antonelli did in his first season, they're maybe about level. And
yeah.
that's interesting for the future. I think we might see future battles for a championship between Antonelli and Piastri, and I'm up for that.
You've got a bit. Yeah, I don't think this year's Mercedes isn't comparable to that sort of 2007 McLaren. They're just not on that sort of equal talking point footing
Or
for
just some of the stuff that Lewis was able to do
yeah.
as a rookie in that car, going up against a two-time world champion in his teammate and other drivers that were also exceptionally experienced. Some of the I don't know if Antonelli's I don't think he's not capable of it, but I don't think he had that confidence that Lewis just had coming in. And Lewis just immediately said, I deserve to be here. I'm going to be here, and I don't care who you are. Get out of my way. Whereas Antonelli, he's taken maybe a slightly, let's say, more measured and diplomatic approach to it. And I'll find my feet and get under the table, and we'll see what happens. And let's just take this nicely. And there's nothing wrong with that. But
Mm.
I think that you get these two types of rookie, and I think he's definitely one of the strongest ones we've seen in recent years, and we've had a lot.
Yeah. And the sport's very different from when Lewis joined as well. So I think that's going to contribute to the different approach of rookies as well. And the fact that it's harder to find that longevity in the sport as a rookie these days. Again, you said we've had a lot
Hmm.
of rookies. Yeah, there's a reason for that. So I think Antonelli played a blinder of a rookie season, both from sort of a publicity standpoint, a physical approach to the sports point of view as well. He'd done really well. And yeah, much like you, I sorely hope that the Mercedes for 2026 is a banger because I reckon we'll see one of the most clinical drivers' title runs since Rosberg if Russell gets his ducks in a row. There's just something about the way that he engages with a weekend and can put together a race that's different. And
It's
I
why
think
I
he's going to
wished
be
that
the
the
edge.
player had been allowed to keep the Ferrari from last year for this year, because last year, at the end of it, said to you, and I'm sure I said to a few other people, he's ready in a way that he wasn't ready in 22 to go for a title now. And hopefully next year they don't change too much with the car and
Mitch
just
and
evolve it a little bit. Had to go on. And then obviously they redid absolutely everything for no apparent reason to finish pretty much exactly where they were last year anyway, if not a little bit lower. No, lower even because they're
yeah, they were.
P3 now,
Yeah,
P4, sorry. Um, and George is now in that window of, I didn't think he wasn't capable before, but he's ready now. And you see this and you go, right, Mercedes. I know it's only regulations, so you kind of got to change everything. But also, the stuff you can keep the same for consistency, please keep it the same. That
yeah.
is not like anything non-car related that doesn't need changing for like, oh, do you want to try this? No, it's working well. It's working well as it is. Let another go.
I think there's a lot of promise in what Mercedes could bring to next season, and I'm excited for it. And I think the Russell Championship Challenge, he's mentally in a point where I think he's ready to push for it. He's proven that he can do it, and also he now knows exactly how the drivers he's likely to be racing against will put together a championship run as well. He knows how Piastri will put together a championship run. He's seen how Norris will put a fight together. He's seen how the teams will
And
back
you've seen how
both the drivers
McLaren how will put a
will put a
championship together
championship
for a
together,
driver.
which is the fact that McLaren won't. So he knows that
Yeah,
if
they'll
as
be
long
too
as
busy. He'll be able to do what Max has done and go, right, they're busy taking care of each other.
each
I'll
other,
go and sneak on by. I'll
yeah,
focus on Max now instead.
yeah, he knows where his attack pathways have got to be, and the drivers he'll need to put pressure on to make that advantage work. And I think it's going to be really interesting because it's going to force Kimi to play this sort of second driver role, which I don't think is a bad thing for him to have to do in his second year in the sport. And again, I think if Russell's doing that and putting Verstappen under that pressure, assuming they're in cars that can compete, it's
Hmm.
going to take a bit of that pressure off of Hadjar as well, because it's going to be that sort of thing of we just need you to play a consistent second fiddle to Verstappen.
We've had the bar put extra low for you to get
Yeah,
over. We got it ordered especially in from Japan. and you should be
Yeah.
able to get over that pretty nicely now.
This bar
So
is
there we
set at
go.
5'4". You should be able to clear this. You're short yourself, but you should be able to clear this. I think it's going to be really an interesting one from Russell's point of view. When it comes to Red Bull, we've already alluded to it a little bit. Third place as a constructor, which is not bad considering the rather muddled season they've had, both from sort of uh,
Every perspective, really.
oversight and also their driver lineup as well. Their driver lineup really not helping matters. Max Verstappen P2, Yuki Tsunoda P17. Is this possibly the greatest gulf between two drivers in a team at the end of a championship? I mean,
That's going to be something to look at over
yeah, I
the break,
probably
I
should have
think.
dug into that because usually they sort of do it when there's a championship winner.
There's a record he's not going to want.
I know that Verstappen and Perez last year, I want to say, had possibly the greatest points gulf between the champion and his teammate. But I think that this year's,
Then Yuki took it personally.
yeah, this year's difference could be even more astonishing. Um, I'll let you kick off with Red Bull because I broadly agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, there's not. I don't know how to phrase it as much. So I want to build on what I was just saying about Leclerc and Russell. They're ready for a championship now to really fight for one. Verstappen, he's on the next rung of the ladder up. He's got four. He basically had a fifth for a minute there. And he just seems to this year have entered an entirely new dimension of existence. And you saw that back in Japan. Not a very exciting race to watch, but an absolutely brilliant race to watch Max Verstappen be Max Verstappen.
Yeah,
And when he retires, that's going to be, unless he somehow does more of this between now and then, in the top 10 Max
Max
Verstappen
Verstappen
races and
moment. Yeah,
performances, because he sort of knew pretty early on, I think, that something would have to go diabolically wrong for McLaren for him to be in with a shot at a title. And
mm,
so he just resigned himself, go, you know what? Everything has been a bonus anyway, since I won my first title. So that's okay. Let's just focus on the driving. Let's focus on this and that. And we'll still try and get the maximum out of it. We're here to fight and win and everything. But if it doesn't go my way, I'm not going to be Verstappen as old. I mean,
yeah,
okay, yeah, in Hungary he was a little bit, but generally speaking. And that just puts him into this whole other plane, like we were saying. And you don't know how to really compare that to other drivers because there's not many who have gotten there. You look at Lewis maybe as someone who has that, but you don't have the obvious way to point that out because he's never really given up the fight. And I don't, and it's not to say Verstappen's given up the fight, but he's just approaching it in a very different way, I think. I think Hamilton, he's always pushing to get everything out of it, regardless. Whereas Verstappen can kind of go, okay, it's just not going to happen this year.
yeah,
Whereas Lewis will go, it's not over till it's over,
yeah.
and
Max resigned himself to
even if I
that.
fail, I won't make that same mistake again, and we'll keep going, we'll keep figuring out, and maybe we can get something out of this. Whereas Verstappen was happy to write off the season as early as round 3 or 4
Mm,
and have a nice time of it, and then still nearly won and only lost by 2 points. And yeah, Yuki was just also here. I mean, what a hell of a downgrade from last year, and we were probably a bit unkind to Sergio Perez towards the end of last year, and we had reason to be considering how well he'd performed in 23
mm.
and in
And
the second half of
22 and
last year.
21. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And then he just dropped off by his own standards towards the end of last year. And should they have put Yuki in from the start? Maybe. Would it have made any difference? Probably not, as we now know. But then with the whole Lawson being at Red Bull thing and then putting Yuki in, it was just a mess, and it just never improved. And it was his big shot to really show this is what you've been asking for so long, and then
yeah.
you finally get it. And we're not expecting him to win races or to be on the podium all that often, but we'd expect points more times than not.
Yeah,
We expect you to be near the points. We
expect better than
kept
this indeed.
lowering the bar, and he kept driving under it.
Yeah,
You go,
um,
no, over the bar.
yeah. I'll cut in here because I know that most of my points are about Sonoda, really.
Yuki.
I agree with you largely on Verstappen. He reached sort of a new level of I don't really give a fuck. And it was a really interesting way to see
Mm.
Verstappen approach a season because
We
it
haven't
let
seen that
him
in so long.
it let him try some different styles of racing and pushing and experimenting different things within Formula One and within its sort of rule book and the way that it goes racing. I think it's a really interesting way to view his character in the fact that it gave him a chance to fine tune and spend time focusing on himself when it came to Formula One. I think we saw that towards the end, where we saw that absolutely biblical run of form from him, where he'd spent a season going, okay, what if I tried this? What if I sort of adapted this? What if I looked at adjusting this? And then sort of put it all into practice for that final sort of 4 race run. And all of a sudden we're
Bearing in
going,
mind, in that, I'm trying a bit of this and that. He still didn't do badly. He
no,
only retired once in Austria because of incidentally. The rest of the time, he was inside the top 10.
yeah.
So
And the retirement in Austria
I
was
think
because he
what it
got
was,
crashed into. Everything
yeah,
else was flawless.
yeah, and I think just the last thing I want to add on that before you talk about Yuki is the fact that by saying we haven't seen this for a long time, we haven't seen this from a driver who's won races and championships and been this level of dominant. We've seen it from Alonso, but we've seen it from Hulkenberg, where they get into that mode of we're here for the purity of the driving. You saw that bit with Magnussen and Hulkenberg at Haas last year, and you go, yeah, you're hit that you know you can't get where you want to be, but you're going to try and maximize everything as you can and take everything else on the chin. But we haven't seen that in a driver
At the
who's a
top.
multiple world champion at a top team with a chance at winning that's suddenly been taken away. And then this is his off year.
Mm.
It's concerning for other people that this is his off year.
Yeah, Verstappen's off year is still P2 in the drivers' championship. 421 points. Where does that put him as a constructor on his own? Let's just check. 421 points would put him third, essentially.
So still
Yeah, still
exactly where
exactly where Red Bull is. You can discount Sonoda, and he makes no
and
impact
he's no
on where
difference
that team
whatsoever.
finishes. Ferrari on 398 by season's end. Um, yeah, it's yeah,
There's yours tie-in for Yuki.
Max's drive was phenomenal, and it's a great settling of his character as well. And broadly speaking, it's changed how likable he is enormously as well. He's gone from being someone that Max Verstappen fans absolutely adore to people that Formula One fans really like. He's become a driver that you can be really impressed
He's
by as
done a
a fan of
vessel.
sport. Yeah, he's had a sort of really good sort of turnaround as a character. And I think it's going to be interesting to see sort of what we see of him in the next few seasons. If the Red Bull is good, I would be terribly fearful if I was another driver. Meanwhile, Yuki's fumbled it and gone out on an all-time low. I think I don't think there is a worse way to possibly leave Formula One essentially than
And
exactly.
Grosjean.
Grosjean went out in a blaze of glory, literally. He's still remembered for something. Grosjean still achieved things in his time in Formula One. He never won a race, but he had podiums, he had successes. He was able to prove that on his day, he was as quick as anyone else. He never really had the car to back it up, and he was incredibly accident prone. Don't get me wrong, I love the guy. Went on to IndyCar, did some interesting things there. He's done a bit of sports car IMSA stuff as well. Like he's proven that he's got these skills beyond Formula One. And I think for Yuki, I think he will stick around at Red Bull as their third driver, but this is his major motorsports career over. And as much as it pains me to say, I don't think he's got the flexibility as a driver to jump into anything else outside single seaters. He doesn't have the allure for other teams either. Think back to Albon and Lawson having sublime runs through DTM, and Max immediately getting up to speed in GT3 racing at the Nürburgring. Antonelli, also a dab hand in a tin top racer. And I've long argued that flexibility and interchangeability as a driver is one of the best strengths one can have. And love for the man aside, Yuki doesn't have that to my note. We've never seen him dabble with going off and doing something else or something else on his way through the feeder series. Albon and Lawson, both of them at some point damn near won the DTM championship as a driver. I
And the
think,
only reason Lawson arguably didn't win Super Formula to help keep with a single seater career was because he got subbed in for Ricardo.
yeah,
So he missed races. That's literally it.
and their ability to go and join different series and go and do things. And Alex Albon came back from doing DTM a better driver for it. And
Mm.
again, I think this is the thing that not worries me with Max Verstappen, but really impresses me with Max Verstappen is the fact that he's doing other bits and pieces of racing and spending time looking at other race series because it hones that racecraft. It keeps you engaged with the sport. And if you're engaged with it, you're going to perform that bit better. He's found the thing that gives him that edge. And Yuki, we never saw that. It was just this constant beration of just, I don't know. I don't know what
Blandness.
fell apart for Yuki, whether it was the mental approach to it, whether he never got his head in the game, he never had the confidence in the car. I don't know whether that, yeah, I don't know. You're thrown into a seat against one of the all-time greats, and all of a sudden you crumble. And there are some
Bear in mind,
guys,
that was the seat he was after the whole time because it was always going to be Max that he was going to be alongside. So it's not as if that was suddenly a surprise to him. And you go, oh, I had no idea I was going to be racing alongside Max Verstappen. I'm like, really?
yeah.
We're not
I
buying
mean,
that one.
look at the way that George approached driving at Mercedes alongside Lewis. Yeah, the car
Mm.
wasn't great, but you've still got that pressure of having to perform at the same level as a 7-time world champion, one of the greatest of all time drivers again. But George built himself up to it. He got his head in the space for it. Maybe the team was there to support him through it a bit more as well. And he's achieved some phenomenal results off the back of it, and arguably put himself on in a position where you could say through that shared span at Mercedes, they were about level pegging as drivers. I think it's fair to say when you look at the results that both those drivers achieved through that time, they were pretty close on form.
Mm.
He never looked close, and I don't know where that separation came in. And it's just, yeah, speaks for Red Bull's lack of ability again to develop and support drivers who aren't Max Verstappen or maybe Isaac Hadjar. I'm curious as to how this
Well,
comes through.
it depends how far you measure Red Bull because if you talk about development of a driver, Perez is awkward because he came in from outside the system and just certainly backs up your argument. But
Mm,
then you look at how well Lawson and Hadjar have done this year as part of Red Bull as an entirety, and you go, pretty good. So maybe Yuki's just the last of the old guard, as it were, from yesteryear and is being taken out along with everyone else that's left Red Bull this year and last year, and he's just the final piece of that to go. And we'll find out next year with Hadjar at Red Bull, and we'll find out with Lawson and Lindbergh down at Racing Bulls. Again, new regulations, we don't know how much that's going to play into that, but it feels like they might have learned a bit from their time with Albon, from their time with Lawson, and that's transferred over a bit now. But I think with Yuki, yeah, I don't know what went wrong there, but the list of what went wrong is definitely longer than the list of what went right.
yeah, it's a. I think you could write chapter and verse on.
You may need to cope with this.
Yeah, I think
You've been a big Yuki man for a long time, so for this to be the way that the cookie crumbles is going to be something where there's going to be you in a dark room just need
a
some alone time for
typewriter.
that.
There's a story to be told about Red Bull, and I'm interested in trying to find a way of telling it actually.
The only medium is a musical. I'm telling you now.
I don't have the talent to write that, and I don't want to let Andrew Lloyd Webber do it because I can't. I don't want Formula One cars on roller skates. As funny as that would be, actually thinking about it, maybe Starlight Express, but it's Red Bull would be kind of interesting. Anyway, um, Ferrari fourth in the constructors' championship, and they are lucky to have that. In all honesty, Charles Leclerc finished fifth. Lewis Hamilton finished sixth, just stealing candy from a baby in the Ford Vansanelli in that position. This is not their finest hour.
As a team, no. As the drivers, I don't think you can really blame them for much here. They are clearly banging on the castle door, going, "Would you listen?" And it's the bloke from Monty Python just calling them names from the tower turret instead. And I think it should tell something to the Ferrari higher ups that even with all of the fundamental word of the season for Ferrari issues that they've had this year, Leclerc and Hamilton are still comfortably inside the top 10. Yes, narrow in Lewis's case, but it wasn't ever really a fight that either of them had to have to be where they are overall. And it says the drivers are fine. Fred, I think, perfectly fine. It's other issues, let's say, and this interesting quote from Rivabene came out recently saying Lewis shouldn't be trying to be an engineer or tell them what to do. And you go, sorry, remind me, how many championships did you win when you were in charge of Ferrari again? Oh, yes, that's right, zero. So I'm interested in your opinion to a point, but don't try and recommend how to do something and poo-poo another way of doing it when your track record shows that you have, at the moment, the same success rate as they do, because it doesn't prove that it's better. It just proves that you both found a way of it not working. And as much as I want Hamilton to get his eighth title with Ferrari, it does make me think I don't know what Leclerc and Hamilton have to do over the winter. I don't know if Leclerc and Fred have to meet up in a cabin somewhere in the woods and plot. But if that's what they got to do, and then make it all happen, go for it. Do whatever you need to do, but get it done before Australia so that you don't have another year of this. Because both drivers deserve better. Leclerc, the ultimate loyal driver for Ferrari. Hamilton has all of he's got. I think he's got the same number of championships that Leclerc had years at the team. The combination between the two of them,
Yeah.
you know, you'd think maybe listen and work with them and figure out if it doesn't work, it doesn't leave you in any worse a position because you're already not winning.
Yeah. You're already in fourth. I mean, realistically, are they going to slide further back? I fear they might do. Um, yeah,
Not if they listen to their drivers and Fred.
Ferrari need to reframe how they are run as a team. And much like you, I don't doubt Vasseurs' approach, and nor do I doubt the skills or attitude of his drivers. There's something higher up and more innate in that team as well that needs adjusting. If next year's car is good, it'll mask those issues for another season, leaving the problems to rot out further and essentially causing more issues that'll be worse to deal with when the car isn't so strong. Essentially, for as long as the car is good, the problem just gets worse and worse and worse. And there's only so keep applying a sticking plaster of
It's this awkward thing.
car.
Do we want them to have a bad car next year? But
Yeah.
then you
So
risk
they
Lewis
have
leaving
to
because you
learn.
don't because you want Lewis to stay long enough to at least see some success there. And the same with Charles. You don't want them to do what Vettel and arguably Alonso are doing in Aston Martin, put in all this graft and then leave just before it gets good. You want
Yeah.
them to get the rewards for it.
It needs to be a terrible car so they will learn and think, okay, what do we actually need to look at? Because Charles has been on it hugely this year, pushing that car beyond its absolute limits. We've seen some blinding performances from him,
Car
pole
being evidence
positions
of
at
that.
times. Yeah, and it's a real shame that he got so little in return. And I think Lewis did well to learn from the season. I think he's come away from this having learned a lot, but I think the team's approach to him has put him out of joint. And yeah, I think Lewis has possibly gone into this still with too much of a sort of golden boy at Mercedes approach. The fact that he used to be able to sort of have this very florid, very new age way of approaching things and dealing with things. And Ferrari just doesn't operate that. Ferrari operates still in a very old school way. And if anything, Lewis would be better off going to Williams, where he's got a team principal that listens to him. He's got an engineering department that listens to him. You look at the manpower and the way that James Vowles guides, coaches, engages with the team around him is the sort of thing that Lewis is after. But Ferrari just doesn't allow for that. I think Vasseur would want that to be there, but the people under him don't operate like that. And I think Charles knows that. And Charles has still been able to get a lot out of that because he's very used to a quite brusque.
He's had longer to figure out how to game the system.
Yeah, he's had longer to figure out how to game the system, and he's very much used to a brusque Southern European approach to engineering and mechanical workplaces. And I think he knows how to game that. And the same with Carlos Sainz as well. I think it is. I don't want to frame this in that Lewis is the problem because he's Lewis. It's a cultural thing. You look at who's at the team at the moment. You've got Charles Leclerc, Monegasque, basically half French, half Italian in its culture at an Italian team. You've got Carlos Sainz, who was there previously, Spaniard, at an Italian team. You've got cultures that are very similar in the way that they operate outside of Formula One. They are very similar culturally.
You'd argue the last time they had someone that different would have been Schumacher
Yeah, but
or
even
Kimi.
or Kimi, but even then, both Schumacher and Kimi had the ability to be brusque to the point, no nonsense. Look, this is what needs to be done. This needs to be done yesterday.
I
Get
think
it
that's
done.
where we'll probably see Lewis now if
Yeah,
he wasn't doing that already. I think the problem is if he has been doing that and we just haven't seen that from the outside and they're still not listening. I think that's where the real problem would be is if he had been doing that.
but we hear stories of sort of Lewis writing letters to the engineers and things like, no, they need to be brought into an engineering workshop, shouted at until they're on the verge of tears, and told to go and do it again better. That seems to be the
What I'm hearing is you would like Malcolm Tucker to come in and work for Ferrari.
yes, yeah. There needs to be
That is a series I would watch.
there needs to be a Tuckerishness to it to properly change the way it's motivated because at Mercedes in the UK, which is fundamentally a British team, let's be real, the amount of British people it had in its staff, it was a team that was very open in its dialogue and listening to people and having that sort of Britishness of conversation. And we see that with Williams at present and the way that James Vowles is raising and developing that team and bringing it into a modern, sort of polished office style sort of team, and that works. Ferrari is not that, and you cannot approach them in that manner and expect to gain results. And that's just never going to work. And you look at the other teams that, and the way that and speaking to people who are at different Formula One teams and how they know how each team operates is very different. And there is an atmosphere to each workshop and the spaces where these cars are made and engineered and designed and run and processed across a weekend. There is an atmosphere there, and I don't think it's one that at Ferrari Lewis fits into. And I don't think, as much as they respect his talent, I don't think they're willing to bend to how he is either.
Which they don't need to do that either. I think they just need to find either a third option that is totally different but works for both of them, or find that happy medium. But they just whatever
Yeah,
they're doing now,
there needs to
both
be a
both
medium.
ways isn't working, and they need to figure that out sooner rather than later because otherwise they're
They're
screwed.
going to lose Ferrari, and it's going to be Behrman in that seat. And Behrman spent how much of his
Well,
junior
again,
career racing in Italy?
true, but I also just wonder again. I'd fear that in that case they're still just fixing something that isn't the biggest problem.
Yeah.
And Behrman would then also end up on the scrap heap
Behrman
through
would
no
end up.
fault of his
I
own.
think Behrman would end up going through the same pathway as Leclerc, incredibly loyal, able to get something out of the team, but still not able to actually
But not
fix the
what
fundamental
we
problem of the
know
team.
he's capable of. Yeah.
We'll see him get Grand Prix wins. We'll see him challenge for championships, but the team will ultimately let him down. He'll go down as a good driver who's had great moments with Ferrari, the same as ultimately Leclerc is going to go down. Again, a driver who I absolutely love and think has this brilliant passion and ability to him. But Ferrari, as it stands, is not in a position to get the most out of them. Behrman will slot better into that team, having spent so long doing Italian F4 and Italian karting and used to how that world of Italian motorsport operates, that he'll be able to extract that atmosphere from Ferrari and slot into it. There's a reason why his
Do
Essex
we need
accent
to
isn't
make a
there.
trade? Do we need to make a trade and for the sake of both drivers to get success and to get a championship fight that we'd love to see, do we need to swap Antonelli for Hamilton and go, let's put the young Italian kid in the Italian team, let's put Lewis back where we know he could work, and let's have Atom War. You've got George, who's really up to it now. You've got Leclerc, who then hopefully could work within that window as well. And you've got Mercedes and Ferrari battle at the very least for a championship.
Yeah, it's a cultural thing, but when you go to a workplace and you join a workforce, an office space, a team of professionals, you quickly know whether or not you fit in with the group of people you work with.
And what you can do to get the most out
Yeah.
of it. Because you go, okay, if it doesn't work out the way you like you're all buddy, okay. What's the maximum I can get out of this? How do I make that happen? And I need to be all right with that kind of portion of it.
Yeah. And in a normal workspace outside of Formula One, you'd sort of shake it off and go, fine, look, I'll see out my contract here and then I'll find something else. This place isn't right for me. The job might be right, but this place isn't. I
Mm.
think there is echoes of that with Lewis in Ferrari, and it's a team that I have a lot of doubts over for 2026 because I think 2026 is going to play out pretty much how this year played out, and I think there's going to be a lot
Really
of
hoping that
question.
we can look back at this in a year's time and I can have that clip ready to go and you eat your words. That's just,
I
I hope that, but I also am aware that that is quite optimistic and potentially naive of me. But I would
I
rather have that for another year as per the Ferrari fan rules.
I hope to eat those words as well, but as someone who's tried to love Ferrari and tried to back them and has
You
spent
just don't
years,
understand them in the right way. You're just not
yeah,
treating them right.
trying to let Ferrari in, but realizing that Ferrari never wanted to let me in. And I think that's possibly where a lot of this stems from. Meanwhile, flip side of the coin when it comes to people management, Williams. Brilliant turnaround of form from where they've been over the past 5 years, 10 years to fifth this season. Alex Albon finishing P8, Carlos Sainz wizarding his way in at the final gasp of the season to P9.
Alex won the highest driver in the championship without a podium as well, mind you. So not too shabby. But yeah, very weird. Only one driver can exceed his time for them, it would appear. Albon had the first half, Sainz had the second half, but it worked for them. P5
But no, hang
overall,
on.
like you say,
Hamilton's ahead of him, no podium for him, if we're
yeah,
not counting sprints.
true. No, I suppose we're not. No, that's a fair point. See, Hamilton can come sixth without getting anything, and this and Ferrari still think he's the problem. That's ridiculous. But there we go. Yeah, P5 though, as you were saying, it's brilliant for the team. I hope it's not the last we see of this renaissance for them because you go, okay, you stop development early. That's great because it means you're putting a lot of work into 26's car. Hopefully that translates. I don't want us to have gone, hey, P5, everything's on plan for how Valve wants it to go, and then next year we're looking back and going, oh Christ, what happened here? I don't want that to be the case either. And they're both drivers that are so capable and so deserve more. They're not. I think Albon's not on the level of Leclerc is in terms of um, being with the team for a long time and then eking a bit out of it. But he's a driver where I think he's ready to have his final bit of training to be ready for going for a title. I think Sainz is ready, but he's not taken the traditional path to being ready for it.
Yeah.
I think he's someone who he's had his training at multiple different venues instead of being with the same outfit for a long time and figuring out that way. And I think that combination works really well. They're a little bit like Sauber that we'll get to in a bit in terms of if they next year also have a brilliant car, then they'll worry about that then, and they'll worry about what they do into team battles and all of that sort of thing. And I still don't think they'll let that get in the way there because unless Williams or Kicksauber have a dominant car, they're not going to need to worry or be too fussed if it's one of them getting a podium one weekend and then it's the other one the next. They'll just want to see the team succeed. And this is where Williams are. I feel like they're both doing really nicely. One suffered from a lot of bad luck. Sainz suffered from a lot of bad luck at different points in the season, but I think they're in a really sweet spot. And I just hope that this isn't giving us false hope for 26.
Yeah, I think the sort of readiness for the championship, that level of maturity, you spoke about it with Leclerc and with Russell, is interesting because Leclerc had his one season at Sauber, then moved up to a very
Hmm.
turbulent Ferrari and has had to learn to deal with that and hone his skills at cars that have always been very recalcitrant or sort of a bit boisterous. And with Russell, it was very much cut your teeth for ages at Williams, get to Mercedes at the point where they're in a flop era and slowly work with them to develop it. But again, they've had that process for development. Albon's never had that sort of long, fluid period of development. It was a case of,
I once had the
well,
same kind of thing Sainz has had where you just get thrown around and you got to
yeah.
figure it out.
And Sainz was at least fortunate that he got to Ferrari, where he had that period of a relatively solid car under him, that ability to finesse how to put together a race weekend where you're at the front, where you're competing for those wins, where the pressure is different, where the challenges are different, where you're at the sharp end of the sword. And bear in mind that Ferrari finished second last season. They were in the running
Hmm.
for the constructors' title with Carlos Sainz as part of that. Carlos knows what it takes to get a team to that point. Alex hasn't had that opportunity yet. When he was with Red Bull, he was very much fourth fiddle, functionally.
But he's also had to learn how to be the leader for the
Yes,
majority of his career because he was with Verstappen briefly, but then the rest of the time he's been dealing with much more inexperienced drivers as a teammate. So he knows what it takes to rally when the times are tough as well. So I think that combination with Sainz knowing how to get to that extra level is they've got all the right ingredients, is what I'm trying to say here.
yeah, they've got
And
all the right ingredients.
hopefully,
And yeah, I think while Alex will be the team leader, he'll still be learning as he goes, and Sainz will be the one that's ready to push and develop and experiment with things. And I think that's an interesting way to have it, is you have one that's sort of not a loose cannon, but bubbly, vivacious, ready to do things, and one that's measured. And then you've got the great management of James Vowles and the supporting team at Williams, which really seem to have kicked things up a gear. You look at the way that they were building cars and repairing cars over weekends and preparing them, and their pit stops as well. They never had pit stop gaffes. There was never strategy fumbles from them this season. Functionally, the way that Williams approached this year was a great dry run, a great test run that developed on what they did last year. Last year, there was still a lot to learn. There were still a few things to tweak out, and they were working with this very rough driver lineup, starting with Albon and Sargent, swapping to Colapinto just to try and find a bit of security in what they were doing. This year, they've had that stability all the way through to essentially dummy run a championship push. And the result from it has been P5, one of their greatest finishing positions for so long. And it's paid off, I think, in a remarkable way, because they know they've got the people in the right place. They started on the engineering early. If this car is good, there is a really interesting chance that we could see Williams coming out on top. And again, it's not like that's out of the ordinary, because we've just seen a Mercedes power unit customer win constructors and
if they
drivers.
can do what they did in 2014, but now with this leadership, I could see that then being sustainable for the following years, not then
Yeah,
dropping off.
there is a
Which is again,
sustainability to it and a
if they're
trust.
just on podiums and getting some pole position next year, that's again still part of the plan. They won't be expected to hit the ground running in terms of domination. But if they can do that, that's enough to get everyone thinking, wait a minute, it's going in the right direction still,
Yeah,
but we've got something, and we've actually got the people behind the scenes now who are ready to do what they need to do to keep this going.
and they've broken the vicious cycle that's the antithesis of success breeds success in Formula One. When a team enters a struggling era, it struggles to retain the personnel and the people, the enthusiasm and the drivers, and look at how much Alpine has started to slide. Whereas look at the way that, or the promise that Aston Martin showed, the way that it started pinching people from Red Bull as Red Bull started to stumble. But if you look at where Williams are now, they've had this consistency to it. They've got two drivers that are showing phenomenal form. Certainly look at Alex's opener to the season and the way that Sainz rounded out the season. You've got drivers that you can trust in. You've got this idea that I could join this team and be a part of something, and it attracts that positivity, and it becomes that sort of snowballing effect.
Mercedes 2013.
Yeah, that snowballing effect where the good keep coming and the good keep coming. You go, oh, I want to be part of this success, and it drives them to push for better. And I think because Vowles was part of that at Mercedes, he knows how to start out that little snowball, how to find the deep patch of snow.
He
And
was part
start
of the little
roll.
snowball.
Yeah, he knows how that works. He was drawn into it and knows what draws people in and what keeps it rolling and motivating. And I think Williams for me is very much the antithesis of Ferrari, in that it's not only is it sort of feasting on its own success, but also it's leaving me really excited for what they're going to get up to next season. I think there's a huge promise for it. I'm not saying championship run. I'm not saying wins across the board. I'm saying there's going to be this incredible level of consistency that
If they still finish P5, it'll be a lot closer to P4.
Yeah, they will have fought for
They'll be in the fight for the best of the
yeah.
rest with the big boys.
I think that's going to be the thing that makes people sit up and go, hang on, are they back? A year worth of development, a year worth of finding out how the races go, how you build a championship, how you build a weekend with these new cars, for them to then go, right, now we push. I think that's going to be really exciting. Then Actually, I haven't even got through half my notes, but I've sort of gone on a complete tangent. Mostly it was just saying that I think that Albon had a really good opening of the season. Sainz stronger season, stronger driver possibly, but again, when you look at the numbers, it was pretty close, really. But Racing Bulls is the next one on the list because we've been going for an hour already. We ought to move on to at least the second half of the field. Isaac Hadjar P12, Liam Lawson P14, sixth overall for the team.
Yeah, and I think to not be a million miles away from Williams and to be the best of the rest of the grid with two rookies going around is pretty strong. And it does show that as long as they keep developing these drivers, like I was alluding to earlier, Red Bull as an entirety, they're in a decent shape driver-wise for the future. They are bringing in someone next year who is capable of two drivers. Didn't have the best year that I would have wanted, but we've seen that doesn't necessarily mean it's all doom and gloom for this year. We saw that with the F2 drivers that came up into F1 this year. And you've got three really solid drivers to hold things over when Max leaves. If you want to keep all three of them, you could, if one of them decides to leave to go somewhere else, you've still got two really good ones, and you've got a good blueprint for how to treat the rest of the ones in the pipeline a bit further down in F2 and F3. And it's been a while since we could say this about Red Bull, if ever. We are so used to Red Bull having so many drivers in their academy, in their junior categories. But in terms of producing multiple consistently good drivers that they keep in the team, I think the last one we had was Gasly. Albon, they didn't give him the right support. Gasly, you could argue the same thing, but he, you knew that if you treated him right, if you watered him in the right way, he would blossom. And they just never really got round to that. Whereas now, I feel like we've had the strongest showing of potential and learnings from all those previous lessons that makes me think they could be really interesting to watch and actually a good place to go for the future for other young drivers thinking, I'd like to be part of a driver academy, but how do I choose?
Yeah, there's I don't want to pin it all on the fact they got rid of Horner, but there's been with the
But
interesting.
you're gonna think about it.
It's in my mind.
They got rid of Marco too.
They got rid of Marco as well. We're not
They're
going
gonna
to. We
split it a
haven't.
little bit.
Yeah, but obviously he's only just left. We're not going to sort of see the impact of that for a little while. But the it's the way that the new team principals for Red Bull and for Racing Bulls have been able to sort of start changing approaches and I think again offer this different environment. And I think this is the crucial thing is we like F1 is as an office space and a workplace as much as as it is a sport. And there is a lot to be said for the people management of it. And obviously we've now got who have we got at the top of Red Bull and Racing Bulls? Off the top of my head, I've completely name blanked on them.
Or the big boss.
Yeah, no, at the
Yeah,
top
no,
of
can't
team,
think either.
it's now at the top of Red Bull. You've got Lauren Meckes, and at the
Lauren
top of
Mickey's,
Racing
yes.
Bulls, we've got
Permain.
Alan Permain, that's it. And again, these are people who have experienced a lot within Formula One as well. If you look back through Lauren Meckes' career, there are some really interesting things there from FIA, running Formula One bits and pieces, Formula E, Ferrari, and then back to Red Bull, and now principal at Red Bull. He's well-rounded and knows how to operate within a team as leaders of teams, as sort of champions of ideas, listening to people. And I think that's going to be crucial for Red Bull to turn around. And the same for Permain, but he's a very technically minded, and that's going to be useful when it comes to supplying feedback and pushing new drivers to learn and engage with the process they're going through. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest benefits for Racing Bulls. Not to say that any of the previous principles for Racing Bulls were duffers. Franz Tost, sublime at doing exactly that role and engaging and speaking to
I
younger
look at
drivers
it
on
the
that level.
same way that Val's built on his predecessor
Mm.
in you go, not a bad team principle, set some very nice foundations, and you need someone to set some very good foundations, and you then need the right person to build on those without screwing it up. And so you get specialists in for where you're at, and I think
Mm.
that's maybe
But
what you're going
yeah,
for there.
that's where Red Bull have ended up is they've got the right principles in for their where they need to be developmentally. And I think both teams are going to really sort of capitalize on that. For Racing Bulls, I think, yeah, you're right. Both drivers put on a strong showing this season. Liam did well to recover from that turmoil at the start of the season. That's not an easy situation to pick your head up from and go, okay, I've done 2 race weekends and you're demoting me? Fine, sure, whatever. And then move on and then build up what's been a remarkably competitive sort of season
And
for
beat
him.
the guy that replaced you
Yeah,
comfortably.
in the junior car. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's a car that's certainly more tractable, but I that's the
But
whole point.
again, you're going
Yeah,
a fifth season driver in the top car versus a rookie in
yeah.
the junior. You're
A
going,
guy
yeah,
who's
that
never
there's only
competed a
one way
full
that should
season.
go.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really interesting one. And Hajar certainly surprised. I know that you and I both had preconceptions, concerns, thoughts on his appointment to Formula One, and he turned it around hugely. Points as early as Japan, a podium in Zandvoort that was properly earned as well, because he'd qualified fourth already. He was
Hmm.
within the fight. He'd
He
so
did what I
many
kept telling
weekends.
Yuki to do all season, but you've got to be near in
You've got
case
to be
something
in. You've got
happens.
to be on the edge of that fight for it to come your way.
Mm,
Yeah, Hajar's average qualifying 9.6, which puts him just behind Hamilton on 9.3. Next closest driver over a pace over a single lap is Alonso, whose average qualifying was 10th. You're putting Hajar in that window on pace over a lap between Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso. Admittedly, neither of those are in great cars at the moment, but he's not exactly
still.
in a front running car himself. So we're looking at someone that's got this ability, and he refocused his pace and his attitude enormously from Formula 2. There's been some great off track videos of him doing social media bits where he's made jokes about the no, I've crashed the car video from Monza, which we loved when it came out because it was that sort of passion, the anger, and everything. But I think he's refocused that, and the growth he's shown has been phenomenal. And I'm really hoping he gets to grips with the RB22 and sits down and enters into those engineering discussions in a mature way. And I think Max is more likely to take him under his wing as well. In this way, we've
Mm.
seen Max with the other rookies. If you look at how much time he
Arguably,
spent
Hadjar
with,
should be in Formula One for longer than Verstappen is from now
yes,
on.
yeah,
So he's not going to feel threatened by him. If he starts beating him, he will relish the challenge. And if he gets beaten by him over a season, he won't mind that too much either because he'll go, that's just nature. It's the
yeah,
next one.
yeah, it's the next me to come along. And I think if we look at how very publicly Max is engaged with Gabriel Bortoleto coming up into the
Mm.
series, I think I wouldn't be surprised if we see a bit of that engagement with Hajar through next season in this really close teammate bond. And I think Hajar's proven to be incredibly personable as well with his teammates. Look at the bond he's had with Liam Lawson. Look at the way that he's sort of stayed connected with his fellow Formula 2 sort of graduates. He's got the people skills to make this work as well. And there's a fair bit of flexibility to his driving skills that we maybe ought to appreciate a little bit more. And again, the same with Lawson, who did that season in DTM, who's done Super Formula, who's proven that he can get behind the wheel of something and with time,
Out
practice,
qualified
patience,
Max
care.
Verstappen on his F1 debut in Singapore back in
Yeah,
23 in a Racing Bulls. And you go, yeah, the kid is good. I
yeah,
don't mind if he's a bit. He's the good kind of angry and aggressive on the radio because you know he does have the talent to back it up. He just needs to be given more than 2 minutes in a car with
yeah.
the team to be able to prove it. Red
Took
Bull.
more than 2 minutes in a very tricky car as well. It's no secret that
Mm.
the Red Bull is tricky. It is very uniquely set up. But the RB is also the flip side of that is known to be a very pliable car. It's a car that you can get up to speed with very quickly. And it does flatter a little bit. But at the same time, you've got to be able to take that car to 110% of its performance
It's
envelope.
still
And
an
we've
F1
seen
car.
both drivers do that. And I think they've proven themselves really handily across this season. I think for a driver pairing for a team that's overall really pleased me. I think maybe Racing Bulls rank up there for me with Williams. I think for the way that they've gone about their season, built things, looked after their drivers, and been mature about things, there is a lot to be said for them in a professional sense.
And I think just finally, in terms of drivers where you could, I think I was definitely questioning this last year and the year before. Once the likes of Lewis and Fernando and Max go, how long are some of these other drivers staying around for? Leclerc and Russell, you could see them staying for a while, but I don't know how long is for them in comparison to Lewis and Fernando, say. Whereas this year, this bunch of rookies, the majority, I could see them doing a long old shift in F1. Even if it's not with the same team, moving between teams, I can just see them being there, and it's nice to have that consistency in a group of drivers like that. And I think maybe from start to finish, I could see Lawson and Hadjar staying for longer than the likes of the wave of drivers that Leclerc came in with Russell and Albon. And I find that quite interesting, but good for the sport. So that needs it. We need those sort of drivers where you see them from the age of 5 this year to 40 or whatever it is, late 30s when they do leave. And I think that that's good for the sport as a whole and helps with fans like us who were getting ever closer to the end of the drivers we started the sport with and wanting to hang our helmet somewhere, but not being too sure about how long we could do that for with some because of how precarious F1 can be. But with this batch of drivers and those two in particular, I could see them being around for a while, and that's good.
Yeah, we've got the next batch of the long lasters. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how they sort of grow and mature through that time period. Meanwhile, when it comes to long-lasting drivers, Aston Martin finished, what are we into now? 7th in the Constructors' Championship. Alonso snuck it into P10 in pretty much the final rounds of this season, in a way that only Fernando Alonso can. Lance Stroll P16. Team, I'll let you start. I think we're into the section of the notes where it gets.
This should go quickly now. Fire. I think yes. I had to read this twice to double check my maths on this one when I was looking at it, but somehow not only did he drag it into P10, Alonso this is the Aston Martin in the final race of the season, but he did all of that despite scoring in less than half the races this season. It's just phenomenal, and you think he really just does deserve a great car next year. I'm really debating sticking to this now for when we do predictions for next year, but I want him to be the champion next year because I want Adrian Newey to get active aero correct. I want him to give Alonso the car he deserves, and for Alonso, I don't care if it's by a point or by 100 to win that championship because the longest gap between second and third or any two titles in F1 history is going to be the biggest gap, and everyone would love it, and he deserves it because if that's what he can do with an Aston Martin in basically less than half the races on the calendar, he could basically have not shown up half the year and then still finishes inside the top 10. It's tremendous.
Yeah, Alonso's season absolutely incredible in what he's been able to sort of just produce, just sort of come through it all with an absolute pig of a car that towards the end of the season was sort of falling apart in the way that it was unable to put together any performance across the weekend. And he was seemingly sort of just driven by fury alone to produce some great drives. And it fills me with this really interesting sort of foresight to sort of what is he going to do if he gets a good car? Because he is driving as good as he's ever
seen
driven.
Glimpses of that in 23. Yeah. We know you give him an inch, he'll take a mile. So you give him a proper good car, please.
Yeah, if you give him a foot, what the hell is he taking then?
We will not mind 24 races of Alonso winning if he retires at the end of it and gets his third. That we're like, yeah, this is the best domination we've ever had. He can leave now.
Yeah, the year that we spend every Sunday afternoon listening to the Spanish and then British national anthem will be wonderful. I sort of look forward to it in a very strange way. Yeah, I think very similar to Ferrari. I think Aston Martin left a lot on the table engineering-wise, though. But Alonso, as he always does, made up that difference. Stroll, very different side to that same coin. I
picturing his face in a coin now, and I can't think of any good photos for them to use for that. But it's an amusing coin.
I can weird enough picture his dad on a coin in a sort of oligarchical sort of.
No, you can imagine him on a note.
Yeah, that's a man with a face for a banknote right there. I'm just Aston Martin need a better second driver. That or for Lance to go away and do a lot of training over winter.
Do some more cycling.
It's something.
Because then Jack Crawford could sub in.
there's just nothing exciting about him as a driver anymore, apart from those 1 or 2 weekends where he wakes up and drives like Prime Senna and then falls back asleep
He's
again.
the only driver outside of Lewis and Max where people I know who have no interest in motorsports at all, never mind F1, know of him, but for
The
no
wrong
good
reason.
reason.
Yeah.
They've
They-
come across the Mohawk bloke off YouTube and a few
the
clips
window
here and
licker.
there,
Yeah.
and they're gone. Oh, I suddenly understand a lot of the conversations we've had before. I've just pretended and I've nodded along, like, yeah, you see why it's frustrating now.
Yeah. It's a seat that could otherwise go to a really interesting talent like Jack Crawford, like some of the sort of Formula 2 names we're seeing come through.
You know what I'd love actually? If it had to be someone, I think he's still on their roster purely because then if Aston Martin have the car that I hope they have next year, and McLaren have an all right car in comparison,
Kean
Stoffel
Shields.
Van Dorn
Oh, yeah. just to,
would just be
to
funny.
just to rub it in
Hmm.
Zach Brown's face would be quite funny. Um, yeah,
Even if it's just for a race and he beats
one race and just
and
a sub
Oscar.
in. Yeah, just a perfect little sort of single finger salute would be. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just Aston Martin. I want to be impressed by it as a project, but it hasn't delivered anything yet. And it's a bit like Red Bull was this season, fighting with one hand tied behind its back. And unfortunately, that one hand is the boss's son. It's very tricky to be critical of it without coming across as sounding like you're just criticizing it for sort of nepotism, but ultimately that is sort of what it is. I mean, you look at Lance Stroll's season, an average finishing place of 13th, and then somehow finish. That's when he's finished.
Famously not a point paying position.
Yeah, um, points on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Grand Prix, a couple of sprints. And that's about it. And then obviously it did not start in Spain as well. I've got him listed for here. So there's and one DNF as well. It's just a season where you look at it and go, other people have done more in lesser cars. I don't get what you're doing. And it's in such stark contrast because you've got Fernando Alonso driving in the prime of his life. And you're like, okay, so there is something in this car to be had, but you're not having it. And walking away from it with 37% of the point share is generous. But anyway, we won't dwell on Aston Martin too much. We'll get to the more interesting case of Haas, who finish eighth. Ollie Behrman, P13, Esteban Ocon, P15.
Yeah, and this is the curious part for this and the next team where it's a really solid year for them, despite being in this portion of the constructor standings. It's a really tight midfield battle that they've had this year. And for them to be in really solid form in that is quite reassuring after many of us thought that a complete driver and team principal overhaul might cause them more headaches than moments of joy. But they've made it work in a way that we've not seen very much of in the past when you've had these big overhauls. We thought, okay, that's Haas done. We saw Ocon be announced last year and thought that's a weird move. Behrman, fair enough. We know what he's capable of from the glimmers we saw of him last year. But I don't know what Ocon's going to do at that team. Is that really where he's finding his calling? But yeah, maybe. Actually, it turned out pretty well. I mean, yeah, P15, P13, you got, but they just played a really nice team game. And we made the jokes about the strategy a little bit this year with Ocon, but it's kind of worked at the same time. You're not wrapping them on the knuckles too harshly for it. And if you've not listened to it, and if anyone else who is listening to this hasn't listened to it, go and listen to the Beyond the Grid interview that Tom Clarkson did with Ocon and Laura, because that just kind of makes you have a little bit more hope for Haas in the same way that we were talking about when Toyota announced that they were going to be the main partner for next year. You go, they're getting really nice pieces together here. The synchronicity is there, the harmony is there. Hopefully, if they're P8, P7, P6 next year, I hope it's by a slim margin because they deserve to be higher up now. They're putting the pieces together in a way that I like, in that's Williams-esque. It's
Mm,
Aston Martin
yeah.
investing shit tons of money in this kind of way of it moving in the right direction, and they deserve to have something good now. And it doesn't feel like they still don't know what the hell they are identity wise. So it's not the American team, and that's going to be taken from them immediately next year before the season even starts. So they need to figure out what their identity is and what their plan is. But they've got everything else, it feels like now. And I like that. It's reassuring.
Mm. And when you look at sort of the season laid out as a graph, when you look at the constructors battle, you have McLaren that disappears into the stratosphere fairly early on. You have Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull sort of tied together constantly in knots until Ferrari drops away and it's Mercedes and Red Bull in a battle till the end. You've got Williams in a no man's land running through the middle. And then you've got four lines where you've got RB, Haas, Sauber, and Aston Martin all pinching and scrapping for points every weekend. And the result is you end up with this really interesting battle where there is, I mean, between them at the end of the season, RB finish on 92, Sauber 70. There is, was that
It's
22
tight.
points? Yeah. It's barely a clear race win between them, between four teams. And that's how tight it's been for them. So I think for Haas, while P8 on the face of it, not great, but you look at the fact that at points they've actually been sort of meaningfully within sort of a fight for an interesting constructors position, let's put it that way. Started the season 10th, not great, and then immediately shot up to sort of 6th, 5th, and held on to 6th for quite a while, really, before starting to tumble around Austria, where they just sort of lost a bit of form through the British and Belgian Grand Prix, and then had to
It,
sort of
it
fight
strikes
to
me as the
regain it.
team where someone badmouths them in the pub and you can't resist going over and going, I hate to be that guy. But the
But
results do not tell the full story here.
yeah, and
Here's why you shouldn't be shitting on Haas.
yeah, and they've that midfield battle has been so packed. It's hard for them as a team to shine through. But they've had some of those stonking results. Ocon P5 in China, really well earned again.
Hmm.
Had to
Which
qualify
again,
to
great
get.
story in
Yeah,
the
it was
interview if
sort of
you listen
overshadowed by
to it
everything
with
else.
yeah.
But yeah, and he had to qualify to get his car into that position to be able to sort of make the most of the scenario that befell him. And Behrman's P4 in Mexico in a rookie season in a Haas is not to be sniffed at. That is an outstanding run for any driver in a car that is, and Haas will admit it, not exactly there. At a circuit that is very tricky to get the aero set up for, very tricky to make the tire life last for, because it's an aggressive tarmac. It is hot. It is a challenging condition. We know that as soon as you get on the grass there, your tire life just drops away. And Behrman put up with the pressure of that and made an absolutely incredible run through that race. I think it comes up a bit later on without wanting to spoil some of the sort of prizes and predictions we've got below. But it's, yeah, I think Haas have had more glorious moments this year than I think you may remember off the top of your head. There have been some great, great points in time for them. And while their strategy still needs a lot of work, there is promise with them as a team. They do
They're in
need
a
to,
position where it's not the worst thing in the world.
yeah. And I think you're right when you say they need to find that identity because with Cadillac approaching, they won't be the American Formula One team anymore. Cadillac is, if anything, arguably more American in and of its nature.
Even and we're already doing a long episode. We can split this if we need to and figure that out. But just while we're there, with Honda coming on board, with some of the traditional liveries we've seen from Honda in the past, should they
Toyota.
just morph? Yes,
You keep saying Honda.
Honda. Honda. Sorry.
It's
I
Toyota.
was so sure of myself, so sure of myself.
You were thinking of
Toyota.
the Honda Earth livery for a brief minute, weren't you?
I need to, you know what? Cut all of this because I'm now not sure if I'm thinking of Honda or Toyota. I need to scratch that.
Good
Doesn't
on you.
matter. We'll move on.
We'll move on from Haas then to a team that you've resoundingly enjoyed the livery of, though. If we're talking liveries, I'll keep it in because it makes a nice link. Sauber, and again another one a bit like Haas, where they've had those moments of sort of excellence, but it's just sort of lost in this melee between them and Aston Martin and RB.
Still think Honda should join though. You know, keep the Japanese thing with it going, and then you can have Toyota, Haas, and Honda. That would work nicely for me. Let's try and tie it back. But yeah, kicks out, but it worked really, really nicely this year for them. And to be happy with ninth place out of 10 seems insane. But here we are.
Again, they're only
especially
22
after
points off
last
of the
year.
guy in sixth. Yeah.
Yeah, but again, after last year, where we were genuinely ecstatic that they got a point in Qatar, thanks to Joe, and then in Australia, they already did like 500% upmark from their entire season, was brilliant. Both drivers did much more with that car all year than we thought was possible. The livery has been excellent. They gave Sauber and Peter Sauber a brilliant send off in Abu Dhabi, befitting with the same number of points that they scored on their first entry, as I mentioned before, with Hulkenberg. And you can't really complain. And weirdly, start of the year, if you'd asked me who am I most looking forward to seeing in 26, Audi or Cadillac, I'd have said Cadillac. Now, Audi. Really weird.
Hmm. I agree with you. Yeah, finishing ninth, Nico Hulkenberg P11, Gabriel Bortoleto, not a perfect season for him. There was a few stumbles, a few hurdles, P19, but
And
again,
he's a rookie in a Sauber.
yeah, it's not
You're
a
not
great
expecting him to
car.
have a great season.
Yeah, it's not a perfect car to try and learn in and get used to. It's got its quirks, foibles. It's not the quickest. It means that you're never in that sort of easy part of the grid to get carried by the natural pace of it. And yeah, worryingly, I once more I agree with you. And again, that pitched battle means that Sauber has done well to pinch as many points as they have. And we saw how much, like, was it Kota where Nico Hulkenberg came like 10th or ninth? How much that meant to him, because he knew that that counted towards his driver's title battle and how much it meant to the team to be able to sort of keep pushing
Hmm.
forwards. And
Never
yeah,
mind the fucking podium he got in
yeah.
Silverstone with him.
I mean, but yeah, the podium obviously magical, but the fact that Sauber, and again, I don't want to go back to a point that I've already sort of trodden in very much with Williams and a bit with RB. We look at how Jonathan Wheatley's put together this team and motivated the people
Hmm.
around it. And yeah, they've not had perfect form. They've still had a few little errors here and there. They still need to go over their pit stops and go over a little bit of strategy and making calls and the finessing of
I think
what
that's the
they
thing,
do.
though, right? That you want to be happy if you're not at the sharp end, if you're not doing what Williams is doing and progressing nicely with your however many year plan. You want if you're P9, you want people to be happy about it. You've somehow converted neutrals to being fans. You've somehow got someone who was ready to not give two shits about you at the start of the year into preferring you to the new team that we've been clamoring for years and years and years. And you've done that in a season where you've just had to be in the right place at the right time half the time. Have some fun moments with that too. Seeing Magnussen there at Silverstone when Hulkenberg got the podium as well was excellent. And
Mm.
you go, yeah, you've got over that low threshold that you need to get over. And we weren't expecting you to go and get podiums or too many points, but we just wanted you to not make mistakes. And they didn't really.
Mm.
Again, you try and think of like you go for Ferrari. Yeah, please do choose any mistake from the season. You look at McLaren, you go, yeah, Las Vegas immediately. If you want to ignore higher rules, you look at Alpine, you go the whole season. But you look at Haas, you look at Kicks Up, you look at Racing Bull, and you go, they're obviously not perfect because of course they're not.
Mm.
But they're not making, again, my famous phrase from the season, fundamental issues. They're getting the basics right,
Yeah,
and it's really working well for them. And
that's
you kind of think if Hassan Behrman also deserved a podium in Mexico. It's as close as they were going to get. They were in that prime position for if an engine goes pop, then you're doing what Hadjar and Zandvoort, and you've done all the hard work and it's paying off, and you get that extra bonus. But he would have still been happy with P4 and Zandvoort. And you go, yeah, this is what we want from these teams, so that you can somehow hear us talking on a podcast going P9, excellent work.
getting those fundamentals in the right place in a year where they need to be doing this building to get ready for Audi to come in when they are going to be under so much scrutiny as a significant manufacturer joins the sport. Audi is it's not like Daewoo joining Formula One, which would be laughably improbable, or Lotus, which keeps touting returning. It's getting silly at the moment.
Double checking their posts for stuff like, have you actually announced something, or is this just you being you again? Well, it's just you being you again.
But Audi coming in and a brand that has, in recent history, had such a level of dominance when it's come to other branches of motorsports. Think back to Tom Christensen with them at Le Mans and the World Endurance Series. Think back to them with the Quattro a decade or two before that with the World Rally scene. Audi enters motorsport, has a look at it, takes a little while to just go, okay, we'll do this, get it figured out, and then goes. And this has possibly been the first season of that little bit of figuring it out, getting in Mr. Wheatley and going, right, we saw what you did at Red Bull. The fact that Red Bull could do pit stop changes in the dark in sub 2 seconds, they could do a sub 4 in zero gravity. They were the guys that, while they were the party team, also operated ruthlessly. And Audi have gone, that's what we need. Get that man, regardless. And Mr. Wheatley and his little dog have moved over to Switzerland and to sort of southern edge of Germany and got ready for this. And I think this season, like you said, getting those fundamentals correct is really exciting. It seems completely boring and like antithesis to the excitement of Formula One, that we should be excited about a team getting the little bits right. But it's because
That's what it's about, though. Everyone. You want to see the underdog doing well after so long, and we have so many underdogs in the sport that when they do get these little bits right and they show that potential, you go, please don't mess this up, because this would be really great in terms of a storyline, especially on the cusp of a new regulation set. You look at how things switched last time. Red Bull were still there, but not really there for a bit. Mercedes came out of nowhere. Ferrari had some trouble compared to the previous season where they were in the mix a little bit. Williams came out of nowhere. And you go, yes, this is the kind of thing I want. And you were all capable of kind of having that level of success and building on that. And arguably, there's no reason all of you can't. And we get an even more exciting version of it.
Yeah, I think
that's why it's exciting.
Yeah, it's because we know the promise that it's lining up to be and lining up to deliver. The opposite of that, though, is Alpine finishing P10, Pierre Gasly P18, Franco Colapinto P20.
What do you even say?
I couldn't do any worse than that if you put me in. Honestly, I could have a go. Get me.
You have the same amount of points as Colapinto by the end of the season.
Exactly. I could go in and do pretty much that. Trundle around at the back. I would probably be too scared to go so fast that I'd crash, and therefore would also be relatively cheap. And because all you need to do is pay me a bit.
How many times will he get lapped today?
Yeah, all you need to do is pay me a little bit more than £25,000, which I'm on at the moment as a staff writer, and I'd be very happy. Let's call it an equal 50 grand. I'd be the cheapest Formula One driver hired since the 50s.
Still very cheap in comparison.
Yeah, like some drivers are on 50 grand a race or something ridiculous, or 50 grand a point, whatever it was that
can be broken.
Yeah, 50 grand a year. I'll be, as long as they get the nice mouse or watch that comes with it, I'll get some free clothes, so I don't need to worry about fitting that into my 50 grand budget. I'll be happy. I'll even get an Alpine car to drive around in. Although that didn't go very well for Esteban Ocon because it did have a tracker in it, so they did know when he was.
That one might be quicker than the F1 car, though.
Yeah, but also Alpine knew when Esteban was shopping around and going to all different headquarters of different teams.
I do remember
they
that.
were just looking at the tracker in his company car, going, "Why did you take the company car, you idiot?" Surely
you kind of like that, though.
But
yeah, there's really nothing to.
He had nothing to lose. It was a case of check me. You know
what are you going to do? What are you going to offer me exactly? Yeah, I've got a saving grace for them later, but in terms of performance for a year,
is this?
I really want to see Jack doing back in F1 at some point, even if it is just one season and gone again, just for some vindication, because he definitely dodged a bullet by being able to get out of Alpine.
Yeah.
But I just don't like how it was done, and I do think that a lot of the performance in this year is karma for being so unceremonious towards doing. Because again, you thought two races was harsh. Of course it was, but 5 is hardly much better. And it's and again, for what? For what?
For what game?
Nothing has. Yeah, you gained literally nothing.
Yeah. I mean, Jack Doohan is still struggling to complete a racing lap around Suzuka in Super Formula.
That one corner he really doesn't like.
He's very good at what is that? Six?
No, it's the first turn, I think, isn't it?
No, he fucked up turn one in Formula One, but in Super Formula,
Oh,
he
it's that.
does the
Okay.
S's, and then it's one, two, three, four, five,
It's
six,
somewhere
seven,
up there anyway.
eight. I think it's seven, eight, nine, 10. Somewhere through that section there, he's yeah, really, really not getting to grips
He
with that.
doesn't like that, no. But
Not deserving
yeah,
of all the
I
way
don't know
he's
if
perceived online, but it is
no,
funny to watch
I
him.
don't see him coming back to F1, but I would also like to see him come back to F1 for the same reason I'd like Stoffel Van Dorn to come into Aston Martin briefly next season
Just as a big
for a race and
fuck
just
you.
drive past Alpine and go, well, hey, I'm getting more points than you did all of last year and possibly all of this year in someone else's car. On your way.
Yeah, do unto I don't know, like
Anyone.
anyone
Just do what Hulkenberg did in 2020 with Aston Martin. Just pop in, race or two, get a couple points, on your way.
randomly appear at Cadillac, qualify third, get some points, no further discussion.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, that's Alpine. So our winners and spinners from the
The
season.
season.
Thiemo, your winner, please.
Williams. Because no one can disagree, I think. It's that
No,
perfect middle ground.
yeah,
Everyone wants to see them do well. We were worried about Sainz. He then came up. Took him a little longer than we would have liked, but it worked out in the end. Proper podium in Qatar to back up the one he got in Baku, which he got on the Saturday, it feels like, and then just had to not lose on the Sunday. But Qatar was a really nice podium for him, felt properly deserved. And Albon, it feels like despite the bad luck, he's found his permanent home in F1 and should be there for the foreseeable.
mm, I can't disagree with you. I think it is a really good pick. For me, I've gone for Kimi Antonelli. I think the pressure he faced coming into Formula One, the
Mhm.
scrutiny, the harassment at points has been enormous. And I think he has done so well to overcome it and to look, I'm not going to say imperious, but certainly look on form to be comparative to his teammate, because ultimately that's your closest rival in Formula
He
One.
proved to us
That
what
station.
Toto saw.
Yeah. And he came in against George Russell, someone who had looked in lockstep with a seven-time world champion for the previous four seasons, and came in and went, I can get on his coattails and
Mm.
I can be there as the second driver to him. I can be there to be in that fight for points every weekend. And I think once he'd got to grips with it, got his headspace right, he proved that he is furiously quick. And it's exciting to see what comes next from him. So yeah, for me, I think he is yeah,
No,
obvious.
like Hadjar, he's changed my opinion from him from the start to the end, and I'm happy to have been
Yes, we're
wrong, I suppose, or I'm glad to have had my mind changed
yeah, I'm glad to
because that's what you want at the end of the day. You don't want as much as wasn't a fan of Colapinto coming in and replacing Doohan. If he'd then gone and done unspeakable things of good in that Alpine,
mm,
fair enough. You know,
yeah,
okay, fine. But he didn't. Whereas Antonelli and Hadjar, they did. And so
yeah,
I'm like, you know what? You prove me wrong. I don't mind. I like it when that happens because it means that people who are in charge of these decisions, they do know what they're talking about. And I couldn't have called it better. I would have called it wrong.
yeah,
Whereas at the moment, if you're driving for Alpine, well, I might as well run the team.
yeah. And yeah, with Antonelli, it is that I'm happy to eat my words if it shows that someone has been through a phase of growth and development and actively pushed to get to a better place and to go, okay, yeah, you've come out of this and you've proven more of yourself. I think that is what this the winner aspect of this is. Spinners, I feel we've got some obvious picks here.
Yeah, the rest of this for a bit, we should be pretty quick at going through now without having too much reasoning. It should be pretty understandable. Alpine, unsurprisingly for me, I've chosen as the spinners of the season.
Yep, fair enough. For me, Sonoda, I think we went through this in the main aspect. You got your shot, you blew it, well done. Um, driver of the season for you, Thiemo?
Max Verstappen, purely because of that post-summer break form, not off the podium once. 2 points within that championship, number 5. and he had no right being there. And he knew it, everyone knew it, and McLaren were damn lucky that Leclerc didn't have a slightly quicker car.
Yeah, he got yeah, I can't disagree with you. I've picked someone different just for the sake of sort of
Mm.
mentioning it. But
Which I was also toying with choosing.
yeah, it was between
Again,
it's between these
as you
two.
mentioned earlier, he did no wrong.
Yeah, Oscar Piastri. That opening stint to his season, once he'd got Australia, Japan, and China out of the way, or China, I think was the start of his good form, really. All of a sudden, we're like, oh, little kid's got moves. And we're
I
like,
do wonder as well if that Baku DNF hadn't happened, he'd got some points. How close that final.
it would have kept him
It's
a lot
annoying because
closer
obviously
to
it's
it.
not won or lost in a single
And
moment, but
yeah,
you do
again,
focus more on
if
the
he'd not let Norris through Monza,
Monza. Yeah.
stuff like that, it could have panned out so differently. But there is a real team essence to him. And again, much like we were saying with Antonelli and with Hadjar, I think Oscar has learned a lot this season.
hmm
And
hmm
that's dangerous for those around him in much the same
He's
way
going to
that
go off in the winter and have a rocky montage.
in much the same way that we said that Verstappen and Russell have learned a lot about themselves and the drivers around them this season. Piastri is in very much that same situation where he is he will have a notebook full of details of how other people drive and how to put together a season. So it's going to be really interesting. Rookie of the season, then.
Yeah. The reasons we've been over already. I think they've all done a really well. One have done a really good job this year, but Hadjar, I think, from where I was expecting him to be to where he ended up, it's got to be him.
Yeah, it's he's really shown up us as his critics. I won't say haters, too strong a phrase, but critics. We were critical of him coming into Formula One. I think that's fair to say. And we have been summarily served a significant chunk of humble pie with whipped cream. For me, Ollie Behrman, there's something really exciting
Mhm.
about him. We caught glimpses of it last season, but this year there has been something that's just tingled about the promise that he's got. And I hope we're going to see him in F1 for a fair while. And I hope we see him move around teams as well, because inevitably he'll go to Ferrari. They'll mistreat him.
I still just want teams to just everyone get up to where the top teams are so that these drivers can grow in these teams and then compete for a championship with Haas. I know I'm being far too optimistic, but it'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Being so kind and positive. Standout moment of the season, then.
Has to be Hulkenberg's Silverstone podium, just because we've waited for so long, and it was the natural sequel in commentary from Alex Jakes's Leclerc Monaco 24 victory to then have the next thing to go on the playlist for Alex Jakes F1 commentary for it to be then Hulkenberg Silverstone podium after 67 years. It
Mm.
was just tremendous.
Yeah, it was a moment.
Hunted down by Hamilton towards the end as well.
Yeah,
You know,
just
Hamilton wasn't going to be kind. If he got close enough, he would have gone for it and would
would
have
have made that send.
been
And
up
we
for
know,
wiping them out
yeah,
if need be.
and we know
But
Hamilton can make those moves around Silverstone,
mhm,
famously so. But yeah, I again, it's a good one. For me, stand up moment of the season, Ollie Behrman's tyre shredding antics at Goodwood Festival Speed were
Formula One.
phenomenal. If it's got to be from the F1 season, Behrman's P4 in Mexico. Honestly,
Mhm.
I was on the edge of my seat that entire Grand Prix, willing him on.
You didn't want third place to go pop, but you did also want third place to go pop,
I think third place was Oscar
or
Piastri.
second, or
Yeah,
first.
no, you.
There's
I
someone
wanted
ahead of
him
him.
to. I wanted him to earn it, and
Mm.
he
Oh,
earned
he
it.
earned it, in the same way that Hadjar earned Zandvoort. He had to be in the right place at the right time, and he benefited from some calamities.
Mm.
But I think he would have still been as deserving. So yeah, but P4 would have been the most happy P4 that we've seen for someone for a long time.
Yeah, he had to qualify and get up there and make that race start and have that sort of clarity and direction to get through that opening melee to sort of come out and go, "Ooh, exciting," and then also have the clarity of mind to hold on to it for pretty much the entire Grand Prix. It was really fun. So for me, Behrman's P4 in Mexico. I love him. And we're going to weave in here some favorite moments of the season from guests we've had on. Are we going to play these in as audio notes or read them out, or you're nodding
All
both?
audio aside from the one that is there.
all audio aside from the one that's here. So this is from Cheryl, who we had on for the review of the Qatar Grand Prix.
Yes.
Possibly, maybe. I could.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. We'll say yes. As she said, because it's going to be Lando winning the championship and showing all the emotion and sharing that with his loved ones. I love how real Lando is with his feelings and how he's continued to show that throughout the season. His mum too, seeing how happy and proud his mum was, had me crying my eyes out. And I think that's fair. Obviously, Cheryl, big McLaren fan, big Lando Norris fan. It's a reasonable outcome, I think, and a fair call from her. We'll play in some audio notes from other guests across the season for their top picks.
Hello, the Undercut Podcast. My moment of the season, so many to choose from, aren't there? I mean, I've loved watching Sauber's renaissance, Nico Hülkenberg on the podium, Lando Norris's win in Brazil, Max Verstappen coming back after the summer break. So many to choose from, but for me, the highlight of the season has to be the rookies. Maybe I'm slightly biased, but Isaac Hadjar, obviously a podium in Zandvoort, a brilliant season from him. Kimi Antonelli, multiple podiums, came really good at the end of the season. Ollie Behrman also came really good at the end of the season and really grew into his seat at Haas, I think, which is great. And Gabby Bortoleto showed some real promise throughout the season. I think the future is bright for the rookies, and it's been a real story of the season that I've enjoyed following. So I think that's my highlight of the season.
It's very difficult to pick just one moment, but as a Spaniard and an underdog supporter, I have to say that my favorite 2025 moment was Carlos Sainz's first podium with Williams in Baku. It really reassured me and probably many others that he made the right move joining the British team, despite not being one of the top ones yet.
My favourite moment from the 2025 Formula One season is, of course, Ollie Behrman securing P4, matching the team's best ever position finish at the Mexico City Grand Prix, battling Oscar Piastri, potentially almost getting a podium, making that superb overtake on Max Verstappen in the opening laps of that race. I mean, absolutely flawless. What an absolute talent Ollie Behrman is shaping out to be. Please, for the love of God, Ferrari, don't sign him. Don't ruin this guy's talent, because you're just going to let him crash and burn and everyone will be very sad.
Moment of the season for me had to be Nico Hülkenberg finally getting a podium at Silverstone. I think it helped that I was there. I mean, yes, my heart was going for Lewis Hamilton, wanting him to continue that podium streak. But if there was anyone else that was going to get that podium, I love the fact that it was Nico, because there was just no one that wasn't happy. The stand that we were in, I think Nico actually got a bigger cheer than Lando from where we were. So, yep, so well deserved, and just so happy that that managed to happen for him this season. That has to be the highlight.
That takes us on to our crowning of the best Grand Prix. Thiemo, you've already alluded to yours, let's say.
Yeah, mainly for that reason. I think Silverstone never disappoints. So British Grand Prix this year. There were a few contenders for this one, but for me, it's got to be the British Grand Prix. It just always delivers.
Lando Norris wins the British Grand Prix, wins at home. Lovely to see. Nico Hülkenberg on the podium.
Purely for Hulkenberg's podium more than anything else. I'm not too fussed about first and second in that instance. It could have been almost anyone else. I would not have cared less. I was there for Nico Hülkenberg all the way, and for Lewis, trying to hunt him down, for Matt spinning off in the rain, and that kind of on that safety car restart. And you just had close wheel-to-wheel action for most of it throughout the field. And we'll get onto that a little bit in a minute, but this regulation set, we've not had too much of that, but at Silverstone every single year we have.
Yeah, it's one of those circuits that always provides. Mine, similar vein, actually, a circuit that always provides, for me, the Brazilian Grand Prix. Max Verstappen going from the pit lane to the podium is an astonishing drive. And again, you tipped your hat to him and said sort of best driver of the season. I think that for me is one of the reasons why he is deserving of that accolade. Few drivers can make a push from a car that is completely rebuilt, completely changed, completely untested by what they would have likely done in sort of the sim at home in Milton Keynes. They overhauled that car and turned it into a different machine the next day, setup wise. And yeah, Verstappen then got to grips with it immediately, i.e., the formation lap, and then blew through the field. And it's just one of those moments where you watch it and go, oh. And we watch back and you think of sort of like Hamilton doing much the same when he had like the grid
I was just thinking
penalties
it's sort of a
for
natural sequel for a
2021.
rival to do from
Yeah.
that. So
Or Vettel when it was sort of critical to one of his championship years where he had to finish a certain position at Brazil, and he made that run through. 20, yeah, it might have been 2012 where he got spun out or got damage early on, had to pit and then climb his way through. It's one of those ones where he made you fight for it, and that's what makes it really count. And I love that. Flip side, worst Grand Prix.
2011. Chinese Grand Prix, I think, just because we have had good races there, but this was the only one all year where I was just sitting there and nothing happened at all. Other ones that are also low down on my list, I can at least go, okay, but there was maybe a little bit of this, maybe a little bit of that, or there's an extenuating circumstance. But in China, just absolutely nothing. I remember Lawson bashing into the side of someone, and that's about it. It was some really aggressive racing that I liked from him, and that's the only reason it stood out. The rest of it, no idea.
Yeah, fair. For me, I'm gonna go for Monaco because it's not been good for a little while. Let's be real. We haven't had.
I don't know if you can blame the track for that, but that's just my I'll die on Monaco Hill argument, so I'm not going to go too much on that.
Yeah, and I think listeners will know that I'm with you on that argument, but I think this year trying to change it with like the mandated 2 stops.
Oh yeah, no, that didn't work at all.
No, and the fact that we ended up with such an enormous DRS train that George Russell got bored and just tried to cheat and overtake Alex Albon through the chicane, and still didn't work. I'm.
Yeah, I'll give you that actually.
Underwhelmed
Because again, it was kind of the change that was meant to help it made it worse, and you didn't think it was going to get much worse after what we'd been having.
But it got worse. Best livery of the season.
Toss up between Kick Sauber and Alpine. And the Alpine I might just choose because it was the one thing they got right this year. When I saw Lewin in Melbourne with the pink and blue properly in race trim for the first time in qualifying and everything, I just thought that looked right. And then we didn't see it again for the rest of the year.
Never made it onto the TV coverage apart from when it was occasionally being crashed. For me, best livery, the Ferrari Monza special, the one that aped back to the Niki Lauda, where that was nice. Detailing to it, the white lines, the wheel trims, the sort of silver top wing. It looked good. And it was this nice moment where Ferrari went, we've got some good history. What if we turn that into a livery?
They remembered who they were for a second.
Yeah. Shame the performance didn't follow. It probably would have been quicker if they'd run the 1975 car. But anyway, it was a good looking car. Worst livery, I think we can both say it at the same time. McLaren's chrome. Yeah, it was
disgusting.
I know what they were trying to do, but they failed. We've now got something written onto this as a fun fact interlude. Thiemo, do you have a fun fact?
Something I came across in my research earlier. What do Max Verstappen in 2023, Oscar Piastri in 2024, and George Russell in 2025 have in common as we're looking back at this regulation set? I was also going to include Franco Colapinto, but he then Colapinto'd himself.
Ooh. See, Colapinto's
to throw you off the hint a little bit, yeah.
Because I was going to go for completed all the racing laps.
Not a million miles away,
but I know that Russell didn't do that because he finished a lap down because he was stuck behind Alex Albon in Monaco. Otherwise, he would have done. He would have completed every racing lap of the season because he didn't DNF anywhere. And obviously,
you're very close with that.
I'm close with it. I can't think what it is then if I'm close.
It's going to sound like a technicality now on that one. But if you want to go with your thing of raced every single Grand Prix lap, then you have Piastri and Verstappen.
Yeah.
But if you want completed every single Grand Prix, you include George Russell in that one.
Okay.
In their respective seasons. They're the only 3 drivers that have completed every single Grand Prix but only one in a season. And Colapinto almost had that, aside from the fact they didn't have a full season and he had a DNS. So
Yeah,
he just falls short of being included there.
I mean, which does mean that he sort of ticked one of the boxes that Flavio Briatore left open for him, which was don't crash. He wasn't fast, didn't score points.
But also he did crash in qualifying in Imola immediately after he'd been told that.
True.
Because I remember seeing that at the time and thinking
And
you had
immediately
one
stepping
job.
to me and saying it. You had one job, yes. Okay. But otherwise, fun. It's a very good fun fact. Thank you. And then broadly, obviously, we are at the end of this regulation set. Formula One today, as we record this, unveiled sort of the cars and the details and the technical specifications for 2026. We have reached the end of this technical regulation set, the ground effects era. Is that what we're going to call this?
Whatever it was, didn't quite work. It was meant to have closer racing, and we took that to mean you're going to have closer racing where you can all fight with each other a lot. And
Yeah,
instead, it turned out you're just going to be close to people, but you can't actually get past
overtaking.
them.
You're going to be very close to them in a DRS training. Yeah. So best Grand Prix or moment from this, or best Grand Prix and moment from this regulation set. Then Thiemo.
Free wise, we had a lot of good contenders in 2022. You look at Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. If we'd had 4 years of that, we'd have been laughing because that was some top tier stuff. But we didn't. But I still think Silverstone 2022, mainly for that Perez, Leclerc, and then out of nowhere, Hamilton
Off goes
battle.
Leclerc and through goes Hamilton. It is
Yeah,
one
it
of
was
those
just
moments where you go, it's just drivers having a proper ding dong. And
it's what we wanted. You had Mick Schumacher against Verstappen towards the end of the race, genuinely on pace. You had Carlos Sainz give it his
taking his
maiden
maiden
win. You had
victory.
Tom Cruise, Perez Senior, and Hamilton Senior at the podium, arm in arm. You're going, what on earth am I watching? That's one of the great kind of Formula One moments we've had of recent
Yeah.
years. In terms of an actual moment, because it had been so long, because of the story and the weight behind it, and because we dared not think it would happen, and also just everything about how that weekend unfolded, McLaren showing they still weren't quite where they thought they were. Hamilton's win at Silverstone in 2024 to come back after so long without winning, and then to win at home in essentially his last win for Mercedes. I know he inherited Russell's Spa win, but his last proper win, I feel like, on track to be at Silverstone, to be at Mercedes, you couldn't ask for more.
Yeah, last proper win where you stand atop the podium, you hear your national anthem played. Admittedly, it would have changed between those two, but you hear the national anthem played. You have that crowd there to have that moment. It is special, undeniably so. For me, my favourite Grand Prix, I'm torn between Silverstone 22, much like you, or Baku 2024.
Why Baku 24?
Because there was that brilliant scrap that was almost race long between Charles Leclerc and Oscar Piastri. And there are those great shots of them sliding out of the penultimate turn onto that huge long straight where they were both towards the end, having to, like, 70s, 80s style, drive the car, a bit of the lock stops, get the car squared up and get it gone because you knew you were running out of tyres. And then both of them just wildly sending it into turn one, sticking it on the brakes, getting it turned in, not for the Sainz and Perez crashes or anything like that, but because it was this brief moment where we saw Grand Prix racing at its most sort of...
Baku was Bakuing.
Yeah, Bakuing, producing this really exciting Grand Prix where we had drivers qualifying out of position. We had results coming through that we weren't necessarily anticipating. And it encouraged this brilliant race at the front that pushed both of its drivers to the absolute edge. And for me, that's what a Grand Prix race should be. Don't get me wrong, Silverstone, brilliant, beautiful, so much going on at it. Baku was sort of a bit overlooked in 2024, but it had those moments where you sort of went, ooh. It was also an interesting...
I think as well, you look at, like I said, you've got 2 opening rounds in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia in 22. You had Brazil each year except for 23, I think, which wasn't too interesting, but Alonso saved that towards the end with his battle with Perez. You look at, again, you have these moments of Japan
Leclerc
in
24.
22, I think, with Alonso draglining it towards the end, and you get these moments that are really good, but it just didn't come together a lot overall. You had Singapore 23, which was the only good thing about that year.
Yeah, it was Sainz using sort of Norris as a DRS bumper, dragging
Russell and Hamilton behind him as
sort of
well.
behind
Yeah.
him, and then Russell sort of clipping the wall, tapping out, and that being it for him. But Sainz sort of going through and having masterminded this great Grand Prix. There have been these special Grand
Alonso
Prix.
getting on the podium multiple times in 23, and that Canadian podium in particular of him, Lewis, Adrian, and Max. And you go,
Max,
yes, this
is the most winningest.
we've had some
podium.
really fun splash pages from a comic book, but in terms of the overall story, it's gone more Marvel and gone. It's been all right.
Yeah, it ended up with 2 CGI characters and a sky laser beam. For me, though, moment has to be Ollie Behrman's Saudi Arabia 2024. Called in last minute, chucked into a competitive Ferrari with one practice session and said, off you go, sunshine, qualify that. Sticks it in Q3, P7 on the grid, goes on to keep it clean and tidy around a very demanding street circuit.
I think beats Lewis.
I think he beats Lewis and brings home the bacon as well. It's such a brilliant run from a rookie thrown into that top team. 2024 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Alonso 5th, Russell 6th, Behrman 7th, Norris 8th, Hamilton 9th, Hulkenberg 10th. It's, up front, obviously, you've got Verstappen, Perez running away with it a bit, and then you've got Leclerc. But that sort of run from Behrman and the anticipation, seeing his dad sort of biting his nails down to the quick in the garage, something that he still does after a full season of watching his son do this. And that passion, the excitement is...
Got to be a manicure sponsorship in there for him somewhere.
Yeah. But, I mean, it was like watching early Hamilton again, when you've got his dad sort of on...
It's when you find it, you hear a name, you hear so many names thrown around, but then you finally see evidence to back up all the hype, and you're going, okay, fair enough. I'll let you have that.
Yeah, and this sort of came in the middle of a relatively pants F2 campaign for him, but I reckon that was the moment that Ferrari went, okay, we're going to push him to get into F1 next season, went to Haas and went, do you want him? And he then ended up subbing for Haas in Baku 2024 as well, funnily enough. Proved his mettle again. It wasn't it was points again. And again, proved that he could be clean at another demanding street circuit that has a propensity for throwing out these wild and exciting races, and proved that he could keep his nose clean and in a lesser car could still prove it. And it was that moment where I was like, there's something interesting about him. We will watch your career with great interest, as we often like to say.
Yes. I think, again, bookended it nicely with a driver that is in the last chapter of his career and a driver that's in the first chapter of his career.
Yeah, it'll be very entertaining. With that mention made, it draws us to a very neat close for our review of the 2025 Formula One season at somewhere nearly 2 hours in length. Our episodes have been ballooning towards the end of this series.
We'll work on it for next year.
Yeah, we started off so tightly scripted. We're like, oh, bang, we've got this. We've got these previews down to half an hour ago. Reviews, 40 minutes, job done. 2 hours.
Much like Ferrari, we should try again next year and see if we're any more successful.
Yeah. Will we change the recipe? Much like Ferrari? Probably not. We've still got a review of Formula 2 and the F1 Academy to somehow slot in somewhere. In the meantime, though, Thiemo, where can the people find you?
This week, Instagram, 3 interviews out over there with various people from the motorsport world. We've got Nadia Ostelli, Luis de la Morena, and Chiara Vessia. So go and check that out. t.hours.day.on the curbs, or just search on the curbs. It's a lot easier that way.
Nice. And if you'd like more from me, I'm of course online as @JesseOnCars on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And obviously, you can pick up the latest issue of Classic Car Weekly as well. Our Christmas issue is on sale from today, Wednesday the 17th, and that'll be on sale for 2 weeks to see us through till the 31st of December. So plenty to enjoy in that one. Plenty. It's a big bumper issue, so lots to enjoy and go through. Otherwise, that's all we've got time for. And like I say, like we're capped for time. We're not. On this episode of the Undercut Podcast, we'll be back with some more season reviews. Thank you very much for listening.